The Delphic expanse had always felt like a bruise on the sky. The sensors of the NX-01 could never quite define its borders, nor could they reliably interpret its physics. Space here bent like a half-remembered dream. Even so, Jonathan Archer had never seen anything like this. The dimming star lay ahead like a candle sputtering in a wind only it could feel. It didn't flicker with the violent instability of a nova. It simply quieted. Light output reduced by nearly 40% in under a minute. Not explosive, not natural, not anything they could explain. Travis Mayweather's eyes stayed locked on the forward display as the gradual fade continued. He spoke, barely above a whisper. "That can't happen. Stars don't just dim. They collapse, flare, or they go supernova. They don't turn down." Archer stood behind him, arms folded. T'Pol had no explanation either. She studied the spectral readings with a furrowed brow that was still decidedly Vulcan in its restraint. "The instruments are functioning correctly," she said. "The star is losing energy with no corresponding particle emissions. Captain, this violates every model of stellar behavior." Archer looked at the glowing sphere weakening before them. Could something be blocking it? A natural occlusion? A mass of dark matter? T'Pol shook her head. There is no debris field, no plasma sheath, nothing that could account for loss on this scale. The star wasn't failing. It was being drained, Trip Tucker muttered from engineering. "If something's eating sunlight, I'd really like to know if it also eats starships." Archer couldn't argue with the sentiment. "Move us in," he ordered. Half impulse. "Let's find out what's happening." T'Pol turned sharply. "Captain, the last vessel on record that attempted to analyze a similar phenomenon was lost without a trace. The Vulcan Science Directorate has issued standing advisories against approaching anything that renders stellar output unstable." Archer nodded slowly, but they never got close enough to learn why. "Trip, I want the polarized hull charged to maximum once we're in range. If something's in there, I want it to notice the star, not us." As the Enterprise approached, the boundary of the star's influence warped the visuals on screen. Colors stretched and bled like paint dissolving into water. Malcolm Reed frowned at his tactical console. Spatial distortion approaching the hull. Not gravimetric, not electromagnetic. It's almost rhythmic, like it's pulsing. The lights dimmed for a moment, then returned. Archer felt his stomach tighten. T'Pol stabilized the sensor feed. There is a wave passing over the ship at high frequency. It appears to mimic solar output. "Captain, something is pulling energy out of the star in pulses." Archer stared at the data. So something is feeding. That was when the long-range scanners registered movement. Not a ship, not debris. Something small, humanoid. T'Pol adjusted focus. There. 200,000 kilometers from the stellar corona. Archer squinted. What am I looking at? Even magnified, the shape looked almost impossible. A reflective figure gliding on a smooth, narrow platform. Silver, streamlined, beautiful in a way that felt wrong. A humanoid silhouette surfing a curve of light. It flowed across the star's surface on a shining board, propelled by nothing Archer could detect. Reed swallowed hard. "Are we seeing a suit? Some kind of technology?" T'Pol shook her head again. "I detect no propulsion, no power source." "Captain, the being appears to be riding photonic wind. It is literally surfing sunlight." Trip Tucker's voice came across the comm with a half laugh that couldn't hide his shock. You're telling me someone's taking a stroll on a star, and they're doing it on a skateboard made of chrome? T'Pol raised an eyebrow at the non-technical phrasing, but didn't contradict it. Archer leaned closer to the display. Increase magnification. I want a better look. The silver entity glided along plasma currents, then traced a wide arc toward space. The board he stood on wasn't reflective metal. It seemed to drink in light and radiate it back. The silhouette of a humanoid being, tall, sleek, featureless, except for faint contours that resembled musculature sculpted from liquid mercury. Then something changed. The star dimmed faster. Every reading spiked. Reed tensed. Captain, we're losing hull polarization. Structural integrity is dropping. Archer looked at T'Pol. What's happening? The Vulcan's voice remained even, but urgent. The closer that being approaches, the more energy is pulled through subspace. We are being drained indirectly. It is not attacking us. We are simply too close to its field of influence. Archer stared at the silver figure as it turned toward them, as if finally noticing the ship. The being slowed, coasting through vacuum effortlessly. Its presence seemed to bend space like heat shimmering off metal. The Enterprise groaned. Trip's voice crackled over comms. Hull polarization at 60%. If we drop below 40, we'll lose plating integrity. Captain, we got no business being here, Archer gritted his teeth. T'Pol, can we stabilize our plating? We can, she answered, if the being changes course. Otherwise, no. Archer blinked. If it changes course. T'Pol nodded slightly. It does not appear hostile. It does not appear aware of the damage it causes. The being drifted closer. The hull plating wailed under pressure like a ship caught in a powerful tide. Archer tightened his grip on the console. Open a channel, anything. Try standard frequencies. No response. Hail again. Silence. Malcolm Reed shook his head. Captain, whatever that thing is, it doesn't use radio. It doesn't use anything we do. T'Pol suddenly pressed her fingers to the console. Wait. Something is changing. Hull pressure dropped. Energy drain slowed. The being had altered its angle for space. A course correction. The ship stabilized. Travis whispered under his breath. It hurt us. Archer felt the hairs on his arms rise. That was when the voice entered his mind. Not through speakers, not through sensors. A soundless tone, stillness that spoke. Forgive me. I did not mean to inflict harm. You are fragile. I forget how small life can be. Archer froze. T'Pol blinked twice, the closest thing to shock a Vulcan ever displayed. Reed's fingers tightened around his controls. The voice continued. I am bound to the star. Its energy flows through me. I cannot stop feeding. If I starve, I die. If I do not feed, another will. Who are you? Archer thought, without realizing he wasn't speaking aloud. The answer resonated like a ripple against glass. I am called Norin Rad. I am the herald. I am the one who warns. The silver figure hovered outside the Enterprise now, as though contemplating it, as though studying a lesser creature with curiosity, not contempt. My master will follow, Norin Rad said. You must leave this region, leave this galaxy if you value its life. Archer forced himself to speak. We can't abandon a star system that might hold sentient life. We don't run when danger comes. We investigate. We help. Norin Rad's mind voice felt like sorrow. You misunderstand. You cannot help. You cannot defend. Archer stepped forward, speaking aloud now. Every civilization deserves a chance to survive. If someone is coming to destroy this star system, we will stand with whatever life is here. We won't just walk away." The surfer's response was weary. "You think as children do. I once did the same. Hope is a luxury the cosmos devours." Archer clenched his fists. "Who are you running from?" The answer came without hesitation. "I am bound to a hunger, one who consumes worlds. I serve to delay the inevitable. I feed so that your worlds might live." Archer's breath hitched. "And if you don't feed, my master consumes without pause. I starve to save billions. My sacrifice dooms only thousands. That is the mercy of my existence." The Enterprise fell silent. Even T'Pol had no words. The surfer's glow flickered. Energy drained from the star into him like invisible rivers. Then his thoughts pierced them again, weary and absolute. "Leave now. Your defenses are irrelevant. Your principles even more so. You believe survival is a right. It is not. It is arithmetic, and the equation has been solved." He turned back toward the star. Archer stepped toward the glass as if he could stop him with his hands. Norin Rad paused. Not because Archer spoke, but because something else rose on the sensors. A spike of interference, a tactical signature, a stealth ship decloaking and firing a gravimetric pulse. Not Vulcan, not Andorian, Romulan. The surfer looked toward the dark vessel that had just entered the system. His voice deepened into a tone of ancient pain. And now the weak resort to weapons. The Romulan ship emerged, not with dramatic flair, but with clinical precision. Its hull shimmered into view like a shark surfacing beneath still water. No grand declaration, no warning, just a weapon already in motion, hurling a gravimetric net directly toward the silver being. Archer slammed his hand against the console. Ray's polarized hull, full power. Travis, break us out of their firing trajectory. Malcolm, arm torpedoes. Reed hesitated for a fraction of a second. "Sir, if we return fire, we'll escalate. The Romulans might interpret." "They fired first, Malcolm." Archer's voice cracked like a whip. "Fire warning shots. Disable if we can. We're not letting them take him." The surfer, however, made no motion to defend himself. He simply watched the incoming gravimetric wave as though it were a small, insignificant tide. His stillness wasn't fear, it was contemplation. A man who had seen countless weapons, countless times. The beam struck him. Reality shuddered like glass struck by a hammer. A shockwave cascaded from the surfer's body and rippled outward, twisting subspace into rings of distortion. Enterprise bucked hard as the helmsman fought to stabilize the ship, inertial stabilizers grinding audibly throughout the deck. Tripp's voice scrambled across the channel. "That pulse is bouncing off him like he's a mirror. It's reflecting into subspace. It's tearing open dimensional seams around us. Captain, if they keep firing those gravity bursts, they're gonna rip a hole straight through space-time." Archer gritted his teeth. "They're not trying to kill him. They're trying to trap him, extract him, weaponize him." T'Pol spoke calmly over the chaos. "The Romulans have detected his power. They are classifying him as a resource. Their culture values strategic dominance. To them, he is an asset, not a being." A second pulse launched. The surfer's board flickered, wobbling for the first time. The silver being staggered, caught mid-air like a marionette tugged by invisible strings. Sparks of white energy crackled from his form, the star's power now spilling erratically around him. Norin Rad's voice echoed again, strained, as though he were feeling pain seldom experienced. "They do not know what they disturb." Archer turned sharply toward T'Pol. How do we get between the surfer and that weapon? Her eyes narrowed faintly. We cannot. Any direct interference would collapse the hull instantly. Even proximity is dangerous. Captain, we are comparable to insects in a slipstream. Survival requires distance, not confrontation. Archer clenched his fists, frustration burning bright. We came here to help, to observe, and now the Romulans are about to turn this into a war. The surfer's voice resonated once more, quieter, more pained. War is what you choose when you lack perspective, what your enemies choose when they lack restraint. Archer looked at him through the viewer. Then help us stop them. If you do nothing, they'll keep firing. And if they capture you, who knows what they'll unleash? The surfer's body convulsed slightly as another pulse struck him, digging deeper into subspace around his form. His thoughts trembled with effort. If I resist, I destroy your fragile vessel. I do not wish to kill you. T'Pol's ears twitched, her attention snapping to a fluctuation on her console. Captain, the Romulans have shifted frequency. Their net is attempting to anchor him into a subspace lock. They intend to pin him inside a dimensional fold. Trip shouted from engineering. If he gets trapped in a fold, that thing he warned us about, the one he feeds for, that master, they might find it first. Or worse, they might use him to bring it here. The gravity field surged. The surfer's luminous board sputtered with static arcs, as though its connection to the universe itself were being strangled. For the first time, Norenrad's voice cracked with a hint of alarm. I cannot protect the star while resisting them. Archer stepped forward, jaw set. Then we protect it for you. Reed swallowed hard. Sir, we cannot engage a stealth-capable Romulan battleship in a direct fight, especially one that outguns us, outmaneuvers us, and apparently doesn't care if it tears a hole in space-time. Archer looked at Malcolm, unblinking. We don't need to fight them. We just need to distract them. Reed stared for half a heartbeat, then nodded grimly. Understood. Archer turned to T'Pol. Suggestions? She weighed the situation, her voice crisp and analytical. A concentrated burst of polarized hull energy might interfere with the integrity of their gravimetric net. Not strong enough to destroy it, but enough to misalign its frequency. It would force them to recalibrate. Trip answered before Archer could speak. I can overload the hull polarization emitters, just enough to spit a noise pulse. Captain, it'll shake the ship like we're stuck in a blender, but it'll work. Archer nodded. Do it. T'Pol offered one final warning. The moment we discharge the pulse, the being's influence will destabilize again. We must maintain minimum safe distance. Norenrad's voice returned, faint but resolute. I will compensate. Move as you must. I will not let you break. Mayweather's hands danced across helm controls, ready to jump to thruster evasive maneuvers. Archer's voice hardened. Trip, on my mark. Malcolm, hold targeting. No weapons unless fired on directly. Reed nodded. Understood, Captain. Defensive posture only. Archer stared through the viewer. The surfer hung immobilized between a failing star and a hostile fleet, bound like a chained god. The Romulan net pulsed brighter. The star dimmed further. Time was out. Now. The Enterprise erupted with a burst of polarized hull energy, radiating like a shockwave of static lightning. The blast rippled into the gravimetric net, distorting it like a voice cracking through a broken speaker. The Romulan net sputtered. The frequency wavered. The surfer's silver body surged with control again. He twisted, cutting through the energy that bound him, riding loose photons like a freed animal breaking a harness. The Romulan ship's weapons recharged instantly. T'Pol's eyes widened. They are preparing a third pulse, stronger, on a frequency that would anchor him and destabilize us simultaneously. Archer turned to Reed. "Malcolm, fire torpedoes. Disable their weapon systems, now." Reed released 2 precise shots. The torpedoes streaked forward, impacting near the weapon emitters. Not a hull breach, not a kill shot, just enough to scorch the launch point, forcing a shutdown. The Romulan vessel veered off, cloaking in a shimmer of distortion. Trip exhaled. "That'll sure make them mad." Archer glared ahead. "They already are." The surfer floated free again, but his glow was dimmer, weaker. He was drained not from the star alone, but from resisting the net. His voice came slower now, the weight of cosmic consequences bearing down on each thought. "Your courage is not wise, but it is rare." Archer stared at him. "Warn us again. Who is coming? Who threatens this star?" Norenrad's head turned toward the dimming sun, as though listening to something ancient and cold. "He does not threaten it. He claims it. It is his to consume." T'Pol's voice lowered, careful. "You serve a being who devours stars? Not just stars." The surfer's thoughts trembled with reluctant reverence. Worlds rich in life, worlds full of potential energy. He consumes them as sustenance, and in return, he sustains the cycle of cosmic entropy. He is not evil, he is hunger. Archer shook his head slowly. A being who consumes life-bearing worlds isn't hunger, it's extinction. No, the surfer's reply was immediate and absolute. Extinction is random, wasteful. My master is balance. Without him, growth would continue forever. Stars, planets, civilizations, unrestrained. Energy must return to the void. Life must end. That is the law of thermodynamics written into existence itself. Archer stepped closer, voice low. "How many civilizations die to feed your balance? One world, in exchange for countless eons of stability." Archer stared in disbelief at the shimmering figure. "So you doom millions, to save trillions." Norenrad's voice tremored. "I damn only what is necessary, and today I would damn myself if it meant saving what you love." T'Pol tilted her head slightly. "Your logic implies regret." The surfer's glow dimmed further. "My logic is mathematics. My regret is human." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Norenrad turned his head sharply, as if hearing something beyond the ability of mortals to sense. "It has begun." T'Pol's fingers skimmed across sensors. "Captain, I am detecting a subspace fluctuation, power readings off the scale, dimensional stress increasing. It is impossibly large." Archer looked at the dimming star. "He's coming, isn't he?" "Yes." The surfer bowed his head like a condemned soul. "My master has awakened to the feast." The voice that followed was quieter than a whisper, yet vast enough to shake the bones of every living thing aboard the Enterprise. Galactus stirs. The star pulsed as if it were breathing, each beat slower than the last. The subspace disturbance intensified, twisting space into a dark whirlpool that seemed to swallow light itself. On the bridge, the crew stared at their readings, each display telling a different story, yet all of them pointing to the same impossible conclusion. Trip's voice came through, thin and strained. "Captain, our instruments are reading a mass approaching the system, but we can't get a shape or scale. It's like trying to measure a black hole wrapped in static." Archer watched the view screen as the star dulled further. Norenrad hovered silently, his gleaming surface dimmed as though the light had decided to leave him. The reflected starlight no longer danced across his form. It flowed into him like a dying river. T'Pol observed the readings with disciplined terror, a fear so controlled it barely registered as emotion. The energy depletion has accelerated. This system is losing 90% of its solar output. Life, if any exists on nearby planets, will be extinguished in hours, Mayweather whispered under his breath. We're watching a solar system die. Norenrad's voice echoed through their minds, distant and heavy. You are witnessing a mercy. Archer glared at him. Mercy does not look like this. Mercy doesn't kill entire civilizations. A pulse rippled through space. A shadow deeper than vacuum formed at the center of the distortion. Reed checked his readings, his voice low. Captain, we have a signature forming, a gravitational anomaly unlike anything on record, mass fluctuating between celestial scale and something smaller. Norenrad continued, his tone unbearably calm. He is selecting a form. He must adjust to your scale. His presence alone would collapse the system prematurely. Archer frowned. He's choosing a size? The star flickered again, dimming as though it bowed to a superior force. Yes, Noren's voice was empty of pride. He reduces himself to spare the universe needless disruption. The death of one system can feed him for a cycle, but his true size would destroy many, Tripp muttered from engineering. So this thing is being polite while it eats a solar system? That's supposed to make us feel better? The surfer's glow wavered. I am telling you the truth. Truth is not meant to comfort you. Archer pressed forward. You said you save billions by sacrificing thousands. You act as if you're protecting life, but you're not. You're enabling a predator. Norenrad turned his head, the reflective surface trembling with faint, unstable energy. Archer felt for a moment as if the surfer's grief were an echo across a chasm. You speak like I once did. You believe that will matters, that principles alone can save lives. I believed that too, until I watched my own world starve beneath his shadow, and I learned we are not meant to stop him, only to choose where he feeds. Archer stepped closer to the viewer. Why you then? Why did you become this herald? Norenrad's voice was distant, like remembering a language he had forgotten. Because I begged him to spare us, to spare Zenla. I offered myself as tribute. I would serve, and in exchange, he would not consume my world. I traded my freedom for my people, but the price was the deaths of others. My world lives. Thousands do not. T'Pol leaned closer to the scanning display as the shadow thickened. Captain, the anomaly is stabilizing. The being is crossing into observable space. Archer looked at Norenrad. Why warn us then? If you believe your master must eat, why interfere? Noren's eyes flickered, faint silver ripples across an otherwise expressionless mask. Because I remember what it means to resist. I remember what it means to love a world that has not yet been judged. I remember believing that life should not be measured like currency. The universe has starved that belief from me, but your presence irritates the wound. The last of the star's light dimmed, leaving it flickering like a dying ember. The anomaly solidified further. Space no longer bent around it. The darkness took a shape. Reed whispered, Captain, something is forming, something enormous. The distortion cleared like fog revealing a mountain. And there, framed against the fading star, came a structure so vast it dwarfed logic itself. Armor that mirrored galaxies, skin that reflected void. a silhouette that resembled neither man nor machine, yet both in terrible harmony. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't alive in any way they understood. It was hunger, sculpted into a form that planets could fear. Mayweather's voice cracked. That can't exist. T'Pol tried to speak rationally, but her voice shook just slightly. Our classification systems cannot define its nature. It is neither biological nor mechanical, neither energy nor matter in any singular definition. Its structure collapses standard physics. It is indescribable, Tripp blurted out from engineering. Captain, I don't want to panic, but we're reading planetary scale mass, not the size of a planet, the power of one. We're looking at a living gravitational singularity wearing armor. The surfer lowered his head. Behold the devourer. Behold Galactus. The colossal being remained still, as though simply existing was effort enough to reshape reality. The star pulsed again, its light further siphoned. Archer stared in disbelief. Can we talk to it? Does it communicate? The surfer answered quietly. He does not speak with those who cannot offer him choice. Dialogue is irrelevant. Worlds beg, worlds scream. That is their communication. Their arguments are meaningless. Galactus hears only necessity. I hear the voices of those who die, so he does not have to. Archer shook his head. You're wrong. If a being is alive, it can be reasoned with. Norin's voice came with a trace of wretched hope. I pray you are right, even though your hope is useless. Archer glared at the silver being. Then let me try. The surfer drifted closer, his glow flickering dangerously. If you speak to him, you risk being noticed. And once he notices you, you are part of the equation. One more variable to eliminate. Archer stood his ground. I'm Jonathan Archer, captain of the Starship Enterprise, and I don't abandon a fight just because I'm told I'll lose. Galactus did not turn, but something like a tension rolled across the system, as if an unseen gaze were measuring the ship. Reed gripped his weapon's controls. Captain, whatever you're doing, do it fast. We just hit a threshold. His presence is generating tidal force across subspace. If it increases, we'll be crushed like a tin can. Archer kept his voice steady, though he felt the ship tremble beneath him. Norin Rad, you said your master chooses worlds that minimize loss. You said you direct him to spare billions. Then tell him this one matters. Tell him there are civilizations here, life here. The surfer hesitated. The hesitation felt like a betrayal against something ancient, against a pact forged in despair. Then Norin lifted his head toward the towering being. He projected a voice into the void that felt like a prayer. Great One, hear me. I have found a system rich with life, a world yet to bloom, a civilization that will grow across the stars. Take another world. Spare this one. Spare... The surfer froze. The glow left him entirely, like a candle snuffed. Tripp shouted, his energy spiking wildly. Something's happening to him. T'Pol read from her console, eyes widening despite herself. Captain, Galactus is speaking, not in language, in command. He is asserting control over the Herald. He is overriding his autonomy. Reed stepped forward. Captain, it looks like he's being possessed. Norin Rad's voice came not from him, but through him. A channel of infinite will, booming across the Enterprise like a sentence passed down by a universe grown old and tired. This world has no worth. There is no calculus to spare it. The surfer's body jerked like a puppet. His voice returned, horrified. Captain, I cannot resist him. Archer leaned in, desperation cutting through logic. Norin, fight him. We can help you. Just break free long enough for us to disconnect whatever control." The surfer screamed without sound, a ripple of cosmic anguish. His thoughts tore across the bridge like a storm. "You do not understand. My will is not my own. I do not serve him. I am him." Galactus spoke again through Norrin, every word a crushing verdict. "The choice has been made. This system will die." Norrin Rad collapsed, suspended in space, flickering like dying metal. He gasped words forged from agony. "You must flee. You cannot save this world. You cannot save me." Archer shook his head. "No, we're not leaving you." For the first time, the surfer's voice trembled with fear, not for himself, but for them. "Then you will share our fate." The bridge fell into absolute silence. Not the stunned quiet of awe, but the crushing weight of realizing they were nothing more than dust in the path of a storm. The NX-01, a symbol of humanity's first real step into the unknown, now drifted before something that didn't even recognize it as life worth extinguishing. Tripp's voice wavered over comms. "Captain, his readings are dropping off a cliff. Whatever Galactus just did, it's draining the Herald like a battery. If this keeps up, that Silver Man is going to burn out." Archer's hands gripped the railing. "We're not letting him die." "T'Pol, what's happening to him physically?" T'Pol studied the feed with an expression bordering on disbelief. His body is composed of an energy matrix far beyond plasma or photonic structure. Whatever is happening, it is not physical. It is spiritual energy embedded into quantum matter. His master is rewriting him. Travis Mayweather glanced from the screen to Archer. "Captain, if we stay here, Galactus will do the same to us, won't he?" Archer's jaw tightened. "Not if we can break the connection." Reed shook his head sharply. "With what? Hand phasers? Spatial charges? Everything we have wouldn't scratch. That." The Romulan ship briefly flickered into visibility again, still lurking at distance. The cloaking effect struggled to maintain coherence so close to Galactus's presence. T'Pol raised an eyebrow. "The Romulans are not retreating. They are attempting to hack into the Herald's energy matrix. They are trying to steal control from his master." Tripp nearly shouted through comms. "Are they out of their minds? You mess with that giant, and he'll squash this whole region like a bug." Archer stared at the massive shape of Galactus, unmoving, unbothered by Romulan desperation. T'Pol's words echoed like a verdict. They see the Herald as a weapon. They believe they can redirect cosmic power and turn it against him. Their arrogance is astounding. The surfer's voice broke through again, raw and fractured. "Do not let them interfere. If they disrupt the link while he drains me, I will explode into this system. Subspace will burn. Your ship, your entire galaxy, could tear apart." The bridge froze. Archer swallowed. "Then what do we do?" Norrin Rad's voice cracked, each word clearly taking effort against Galactus's command. "Free me from him. Do not control me. Do not steal me. Sever the chain." Archer looked toward T'Pol with the same determination that had driven him through countless impossible missions. "Can we break the connection? Interrupt it without killing him?" T'Pol's eyes ran across incoming data. Perhaps, but only by amplifying his individual energy signature through our warp field. It is possible his mind, his autonomy, is being suppressed by a subspace harmonic. If we match and invert the frequency, we might destabilize the link. Tripp cut in from engineering. "Captain, if we feed warp harmonics through an energy being, and we get the frequency wrong by so much as a decimal, we'll rip him apart. Archer didn't hesitate. Then we get it right. T'Pol's voice stayed cool, but there was a sliver of uncertainty. Captain, there has never been a scenario, any scenario, in which a warp field has been used on a sentient being. There are no calculations, no models, no assurances. Archer stared at the surfer, whose shimmering form trembled, dimming with every passing second. Doesn't matter. We build the models. We find a way. Reed stepped toward him. Captain, breaking that connection might attract Galactus's attention. If we interfere directly, he might see us as a threat. Archer nodded. Or he'll see us as something even worse, as a choice, as something worth calculating. Reed hesitated. And that's better? Archer stared at the dying star. Better to be a choice than a casualty. T'Pol studied him closely. Your logic is incomplete, but your conclusion is acceptable. The surfer's body convulsed again. A flicker of blazing silver tore through him, the last remnants of the star's energy pumping through a frame no longer his own. His voice cracked like breaking metal. Hurry, or you will not be saving a life. You will be freeing a corpse. Archer pointed toward the view screen. Travis, get us to optimal harmonic range. Not too close, not too far. T'Pol measured quickly. 15,000 kilometers. Any closer and the ship will destabilize. Any further and the resonance will fail. Tripp's reply came loud. We'll have one chance to fire the warp pulse through him. If we miss, we'll either fry him or break space wide open. Archer spoke firmly. Then don't miss. The crew began executing the plan with the focus of people building a lifeboat out of gossamer thread. Malcolm Reed rerouted power to polarization relays. T'Pol fed sensor telemetry to engineering. Mayweather maneuvered the ship into position despite the star's gravity wobbling like a dying heartbeat. The surfer hung motionless now, dim as ash. His board flickered below him like a fading comet tail. Then something changed. Galactus moved, not with urgency, not with intent, just awareness. His head shifted, as though acknowledging the existence of the NX-01 for the first time. It felt like a god noticing an insect, not choosing to crush it, just acknowledging that it was there to be crushed if needed. Reed's voice dropped to a whisper. Captain, I think we've been noticed. The ship shook. Debris rattled in the overhead compartments. The lights dimmed. Tripp shouted from engineering. We're getting feedback from his presence alone. It's jamming our harmonics. We can't run the pulse until we stabilize the field. Archer pointed at the surfer, voice sharp. Norrin, listen to me. I need you to resist for just a moment. Focus. Give us a frequency. We can match it. You know what your mind sounds like? You know who you were? Norrin's voice was almost gone. A breath, a memory, a ghost. Zenla. I remember. Archer seized on it. Yes. Zenla. Your home. Your people. Who are you? The silver eyes flickered weakly. I am Norrin Rad. Archer pressed harder. Who did you love? The surfer's glow sputtered, like embers stirred back to life. Shalabal, my beloved. T'Pol's eyes widened as readings stabilized. Captain, the resonance is shifting. His identity is generating a quantum signature. He is pushing back. Archer shouted, Tripp, now! The warp field pulse launched. The beam struck Norrin Rad. He screamed without sound, body twisting like molten light. A cascade of harmonic resonance rippled from his core. The connection between Herald and Master strained. The space around him rippled, vibrating with raw agony. Galactus turned fully toward them. Trip yelled through comms. "He's fighting us! We need to increase power or he'll snap right back into control." Archer didn't hesitate. "Increase power." T'Pol's voice cut through like a blade. "Captain, wait. That will destabilize him faster than we can free him." Archer turned to her. "Then what do we do?" T'Pol stared at the dying surfer. "Let him choose. He must break the chain, not us." Archer shouted toward the shimmering figure. "Norin Rad, fight him. Not for us. Not for your home. Fight because no life should be owned." The surfer's body convulsed. His voice rose, furious and defiant. "I am not his." The chain snapped. The echo tore through space like a scream of light. Galactus's attention intensified, but the surfer's glow exploded in brilliance, pure and uncontrolled, breaking the tether. And then, just as the freedom took hold, the surfer collapsed. Trip whispered, horrified, "Captain, he's free." Then a thin line appeared across the center of the view screen, something like a tear in space itself. Trip continued, voice shaking. "But so is the hunger." The tear in space widened like a wound, shimmering with ripples of violet and blue. It pulsed with a hunger so ancient that the universe itself seemed to flinch. The NX-01's hull vibrated under the stress. It wasn't just gravity anymore. It was something worse. Something that recognized matter the way a starving man recognized bread. T'Pol's voice came quiet and tense. "Captain, the rupture is drawing energy from the star as if siphoning its life. If it continues, the gravitational collapse could accelerate exponentially." Reed gripped his console. "We break the chain, and the master still feeds." Archer felt his breath tighten. "How long until the star collapses?" T'Pol checked her readings. "With the new rate of energy loss, approximately 30 minutes, possibly less." Trip cut in over comms. "Sir, you're not going to like this. That tear is resonating with the same frequency we just blasted through the surfer. It's like we punched a hole between hunger and fuel." Archer's stomach dropped. We opened the door wider. T'Pol shook her head. "No, we simply removed the lock." On the screen, the surfer's body floated motionless, dim, and silent. He wasn't shackled anymore. He wasn't driven, but he was powerless, like an ocean drained into a cup. Archer turned to T'Pol. "Can he stop that tear? Close it?" She hesitated. If he still possessed Herald-level power, yes. But in his current state, Trip interjected, he'd burn up like a candle in a hurricane. The rupture widened another meter, then another. Its edges shimmered with heat distortion, like something forcing its way through, unseen. Reed frowned. "If that's Galactus coming through, why doesn't he just step in? Why the hole?" T'Pol answered. "Because he does not enter empty land. He waits until the meal is prepared." Archer eyed the screen as realization dawned. He's waiting for the star to collapse, to become more dense, more concentrated. T'Pol nodded slowly. A collapsed star, pure energy, a feast. Trip swore openly across the comm. "If we don't stop that, Galactus won't just nibble. He'll devour this whole system, maybe destabilize the expanse entirely." Archer stood tall. "We closed the rupture." Reed blinked. "With what?" "We can't fire the warp pulse again. It might rip it open wider." Trip chimed in. "And phaser fire is useless. Spatial charges would just destabilize the fold more quickly. That tear isn't a thing. It's a doorway." A faint hum resonated across the bridge speakers. Mayweather's hands hovered over helm controls. "Captain, look." The surfer twitched. His eyes flared open like dying stars reigniting. He floated upright, slowly, painfully. His voice echoed not with telepathy or power, but with raw, strained breath. "There is a way." Archer leaned forward. "Tell us," Nor and Rad exhaled, each spoken word clearly costing him. "I can reflect the fold back into itself, force it to collapse." Trip shouted. "You don't have the juice to do that. You're running on fumes, pal." The surfer's eyes dimmed. "And yet, if I do not try, your galaxy will know starvation beyond anything imagined." Archer glared at the screen. "Then we help you." T'Pol turned sharply toward him. "Captain," he cut her off. "No one sacrifices themselves alone on my watch. We got him into this. We help him out," Reed muttered. "Sir, we're talking about amplifying a cosmic being with our warp core like jumper cables on a black hole." Archer nodded. "And humanity didn't build this ship to run from the impossible." Silence spread on the bridge, not of fear, but of alignment. Humanity's stubbornness had taken them to the stars. Now it had handed them a god's ransom. T'Pol spoke softly, as if speaking to both Archer and herself. "This level of interaction between technology and cosmic entities has no precedent." Archer looked at her. "Then let's make one." Trip's comm line buzzed anxiously. "If we open our warp field to him and he pulls too hard, he'll drain us dry, collapse our core, vaporize us. If he doesn't pull hard enough, the tear keeps expanding and Galactus gets a free buffet." Archer's eyes stayed firm. "So we balance it." Trip laughed darkly. "Balance cosmic hunger with experimental warp modulation. Easy day at the office." Mayweather swallowed hard. "Captain, I'll get us into position." Archer nodded. "Do it." On screen, Surfer turned toward them, weaker than anyone could have imagined. His once perfect silver form trembled like air above fire. The board drifted beneath him, struggling to hold him aloft. Archer steadied his voice. "Nor and Rad, we'll open a tether to you. You match your resonance with it. Together, we collapse the tear." Noran's voice grew faint. "I will not doom another world with my inaction." T'Pol adjusted her scans, reading stabilizing only slightly. "His life expectancy drops to near zero once we begin. Captain, once the process starts, we may not be able to stop it without killing him." Archer stared straight ahead. "Then we don't stop it until he lives." Reed glanced toward him. "Sir, you can't guarantee that." Archer nodded. "No, but we can try." The rupture pulsed again, now extending tendrils like storm clouds. The star shuddered and flared. Trip shouted through comms. "Captain, that tier's feeding rate just doubled. If we don't start now, we won't have a star left to save." Archer put a hand on the console. "Begin." The NX-01's warp field unfolded like a blooming flower, luminous rings extending outward. Beams stretched from the ship toward Surfer, shimmering lines of energy connecting man and ship. Noran Rad lifted his hand, fingers barely able to move. Silver light sputtered, guttering like a flame. Then slowly, painfully, a beam formed from his palm to the tier, a mirror of pure cosmic reflection. The Surfer screamed, not in pain, in effort. The tier fought back. Trip yelled, "Warp field destabilizing!" "I can't compensate if he pulls any harder," T'Pol shouted. "Noran Rad must regulate his threshold, or this ship will be destroyed." Archer stared at the struggling figure. "Tell him to hold steady." T'Pol shook her head. "You don't understand. He is struggling not to take too much, because if he succeeds too quickly, the effort will kill him." Archer breathed slowly. "Tell him to trust us." T'Pol hesitated. "Trust is not logical," Archer replied softly. "No, it's not." She transmitted the message. The surfer heard it. His eyes glowed faintly. He eased his pull, risking failure, risking defeat. He trusted. The warp stream stabilized. The rupture shrank. Trip shouted, "It's working! He's folding the space back on itself." But Reed saw something else. "Captain, the Romulan ship is moving into position again." Archer cursed. "Why now?" T'Pol answered coldly. "Because now they see something worth stealing." On screen, Romulan weapon pods opened, targeting both the Tear and the Surfer. The Romulan vessel emerged from its flickering cloak, prow pointed like a blade toward the Surfer. Weapon capacitors glowed dark green, pulsing with magnetic energy meant to snare and carve. They hadn't come to fight Galactus. They hadn't come to save a star system. They had come for a weapon, and now that weapon was free. Reed's voice rose sharply. "They're targeting the Surfer. They intend to disable him and capture what's left." Trip erupted over comms. "If they fire at him right now, we'll lose containment. The whole harmonic fold will collapse. That rupture will swallow us all." The bridge lights reflected dark green in Reed's weapon console. "Sir, permission to fire a warning shot." Archer hesitated. A warning shot could still destabilize the fold. T'Pol spoke calmly. "If the Romulans seize the Herald's energy now, they will destabilize more than this system. They will have a directional amplifier to cosmic force. They could weaponize starvation." Archer nodded grimly. "Fire." Reed fired a pulse blast, a bright blue streak that passed just ahead of the Romulan ship's nose. Their cloak failed entirely under the stress, revealing the full bulk of the vessel, bristling with graviton nodes. The Romulans responded instantly with a transmission, cropped, coded, and cold. Human ship. "You interfere with the security of the quadrant. That entity is now our jurisdiction." Archer responded without breathing. "You're threatening a man's life and the stability of this system. Stand down, or you'll force us to act." Their reply came without emotion. "You are already irrelevant." In a sudden flare, the Romulan ship unleashed a graviton net, a mesh of luminous green energy that expanded toward the Surfer, threatening to ensnare both him and the warp tether. The NX-01 shook violently as the wavefront hit. Trip shouted, "Captain, if that net wraps around the tether, it'll turn our warp field into a cannon. The feedback will blow our core." Archer stared at the screen, then at Reed. "Disable those nodes. Now." Reed locked weapons, firing. The NX-01 unleashed a barrage of precise phase fire, not to destroy, but to disrupt. The shot struck the mesh, crackling it with arcs of electricity. Several nodes dimmed, but others intensified, reinforcing the net. T'Pol's voice sharpened. They anticipated resistance. Reed slammed a fist against his console. "They're compensating faster than we can disable them." Captain Archer turned toward the screen where the Surfer continued to force the tier closed, struggling to focus under the growing pressure. His body shook violently. His voice trembled across the warp tether. "If the net takes me, the fold will invert. It will become a funnel," Archer replied. "A funnel to him?" The Surfer nodded weakly. "To him, and all within reach will be consumed." Reed looked at Archer. "Captain, we can't let the Romulans jam that net around him. One hit to him or that rupture, and we're feeding an entire sector to Galactus." Archer made a decision. "Travis, bring us between the Surfer and the net." Mayweather's face paled. "Sir, the graviton field will rip our hull apart." Archer didn't blink. "Do it anyway." Mayweather turned the NX-01 sharply, accelerating into a dangerous vector. The ship groaned as it crossed paths with the net, physically blocking it. Metal shrieked under pressure. The deck pitched sideways. Crew members scrambled to hold balance. Trip yelled through comms. "Hull polarization is dropping. We can't take much of this, Captain." The Romulan ship adjusted, targeting the Enterprise's engines. T'Pol scanned rapidly. "They will disable us, then complete the capture," Reed shouted through clenched teeth. "Captain, if they disable us, the rupture will expand again. We need to give Norrin more time." Archer nodded. "Then we hold our ground until he closes that tier." Mayweather gritted his teeth. "We'll need full power to inertial dampers, or we'll break apart," Trip shouted back. "Full power is feeding the warp tether. You want dampers? Give me something else to cut off." Archer looked toward T'Pol. "What can we spare?" She calculated instantly. "Environmental systems." Trip groaned. "You want to shut off the life support?" T'Pol replied. "Temporarily. Our atmosphere will hold for several minutes. It is the only system with adequate power to spare." Archer nodded. "Do it." Reed looked uneasy. "Captain, we're shutting off oxygen to stand in front of a God-Eater and a Romulan death net." Archer stared forward. Better than letting them take him and turn the universe into food supply. Trip shut down the environmental systems. The lights dimmed slightly. The hum of atmospheric processors fell silent. The air instantly felt thicker, heavier, heavier. The surfer's body arched with agony as the tear shrank another meter, then 2, then 5. His voice trembled. "Nearly done," T'Pol warned sharply. "His energy is reaching critical depletion. His physical matrix cannot take more stress." Reed's console flashed a warning. "Captain, the Romulans are charging a disruptor volley. They're aiming to disable our warp feed. If they cut it, Norrin collapses." Archer glared. "Then let's cut their aim." Reed blinked. "Sir?" Archer stepped forward. "Fire a torpedo, not at the Romulans, at the tether." T'Pol turned sharply. "If we disrupt the tether, the tear will reopen." Archer shook his head. "We don't break it. We destabilize it enough to scatter their targeting solutions. They won't risk firing." Reed hesitated. "Sir, that's the most reckless," Archer snapped. "Do it, Malcolm." Reed obeyed. A spatial torpedo launched, arcing into the warp tether itself. It detonated harmlessly against the beam in a cascade of sparks, scattering the resonance just enough to distort all targeting telemetry in the region. The Romulan weapons flickered, lost lock, then powered down to recalibrate. They were blinded, temporarily. Archer exhaled. "Buy us the seconds we need." The surfer screamed as the rupture collapsed inward, a spiraling vortex of twisting cosmic pressure. The stars in the system flickered. The board beneath him glowed white-hot. Then, silence. The tier vanished. The warp tether dissolved. The surfer fell, the star stabilized, and deep in the void beyond vision, Galactus's gaze faded from existence. Not destroyed, not defeated, simply uninterested. T'Pol spoke first. "He has withdrawn. For now." Reed exhaled shakily. "We just told a god to look somewhere else." Trip's voice returned in a pant. "Captain, if you're done flirting with reality's expiration date, I'd like permission to breathe again." Archer smiled faintly. "Restore life support." Air hissed back into circulation. The light steadied. The crew inhaled deeply. The surfer drifted, unconscious but intact. The Romulan ship lingered, wounded pride radiating like heat. Archer stared at it, voice hard. "Hail them," static. Then the Romulan commander's voice answered. "Human, "You risk everything for a weapon you cannot control," Archer replied coldly. "He's not a weapon. He's a person." The Romulan commander responded with disdain. "A person who could end worlds. Your compassion is naive." Archer stepped closer to the screen. "Maybe, but at least it's ours." The Romulan ship cloaked without another word. It fled. Reed exhaled. "They'll be back," Archer nodded, "and we'll be ready." On the screen, Norin Rad drifted without strength, no longer bound, no longer enslaved, just a being, fragile and lost, who had saved a system at the risk of his life. T'Pol looked at Archer. "What now?" Archer answered softly. "Now, we help him stand." The surfer hung motionless in space, his body no longer pulsing with stellar energy. He resembled cold metal now, not cosmic fire. The shining polish of his skin had dulled to a matte silver gray, like moonlight smothered under ash. His board drifted beneath him without propulsion, like a raft carrying a castaway. Tripp's voice came across the comm, quieter than usual. "Captain, whatever's keeping him alive, it isn't much. If we don't get him on board, he'll dissipate out there. Maybe die. I don't know if beings like him die, but he's dropping off the grid fast." Archer nodded grimly. "Bring him in, carefully. Travis, gentle tractor beam, match his drift." Mayweather nodded and adjusted the controls. "Initiating soft capture. It'll be like trying to tow a piece of frozen lightning." Reed kept a close eye on Tactical. "If he flares up again, we'll feel it in the phase coils." Archer didn't respond. His eyes stayed fixed on the screen as the NX-01 extended a filament-thin tractor beam. It touched the surfer like someone lifting a wounded bird by the wing. He didn't react. No telepathic voice, no defensive pulse, just stillness. T'Pol analyzed data rapidly. His energy output has dropped to negligible. His quantum matrix is collapsing. Without an external source of energy, he will unravel. He is becoming diffuse, losing cohesion. Archer frowned. "Diffuse? As in disintegrating?" T'Pol nodded faintly. "Yes, like mist under sunlight. Trip cut in. Then what are we waiting for? Bring him into sickbay and hook him up to something. Anything." T'Pol's eyebrow rose. "And give what exactly? Bandages? Plasma transfusions?" "He does not possess biology. He is not alive in any conventional sense. He is a manifestation of cosmic energy. Treating him with medical tools would be like trying to heal a lightning bolt with stitches." Phlox's voice then chimed in, cheerful as ever, as though the situation were a curious puzzle. "Captain, I may not be able to treat him biologically, but that does not mean I cannot treat him. Bring him in and let me at least observe. I've always wanted to examine a non-corporeal physical life form." Archer smiled faintly. "You just described a contradiction, Doctor." Phlox chuckled. "And we're floating in one. Bring him in." The crew exchanged glances. Archer turned to Mayweather. "Get him aboard, slow and steady." The tractor beam guided the surfer toward the shuttle bay. The board followed automatically, as if tethered by invisible string. Even inert, the shape seemed elegant, designed not by hands or thought, but by the mathematics of a perfect curve. Once inside the shuttle bay, Reed's security team surrounded him cautiously. No weapons raised, no hostility, just uncertainty. The surfer lay upon the deck like a fallen statue, luminous only in memory. No sound, no glow, no voice. Archer, T'Pol, and Phlox entered the bay. Phlox immediately rushed forward, eyes wide. Magnificent. His energy signature is unlike anything I've ever seen. Electrophotonic conversion layered with quantum resonance. This being is being held together by principles that violate every known. Archer interrupted. Can you help him? Phlox blinked. Perhaps. But to do that, I need to understand him. I need to know how he lives, how he feeds, how he thinks. I need context. T'Pol looked up at the dimmed star outside the bay window. He feeds on stellar energy, but not as consumption, as conversion. Phlox nodded enthusiastically. Yes, like how a plant absorbs sunlight, but 1,000 times more advanced. Archer frowned. Can we provide a substitute? Tripp's voice came through comms again. Captain, he drained a star. We can't hand him a flashlight and tell him to stop fainting. Anything we give him is going to risk a meltdown. Archer turned to T'Pol. What if we didn't need to feed him, only stabilize him? Could we use a controlled tracer of warp energy? T'Pol's eyes widened. Warp power is not simply fuel. It is spatial manipulation. If we exposed him to a stabilized warp field, perhaps it would reinforce his matrix, not recharge him, just stop him from disintegrating. Phlox grinned. Yes, like providing a cast for a broken bone. We wouldn't fix him. We'd keep him from falling apart. Archer pointed to the surfer. Do it. Secure a warp field around him. T'Pol hesitated. Captain, a warp field inside the ship could destabilize everything around it. Bulkheads, systems, flesh. Archer nodded. Then we isolate him, put him into a containment unit strong enough to withstand it. Phlox tapped his scanner. I believe the decontamination chamber could handle a controlled warp microfield. It's reinforced and fully sealable. Reed raised a brow. The decon chamber? The one we use to scrub alien spores off our jumpsuits? That one? Phlox beamed. Oh, it's quite versatile. Archer nodded. Move him. The surfer's body was lifted gently by anti-gravs and transported through the corridor toward the chamber. Crew members paused to stare, some frightened, some awed, some reverent. When the chamber sealed, Phlox and T'Pol worked in tandem. Warp regulators hummed through the walls. The lights dimmed. A low vibration filled the deck. Silver light flickered faintly around the surfer. His surface shimmered, as though remembering how to reflect. Archer spoke softly. Norin Rad. Can you hear me? No answer. T'Pol adjusted resonance carefully. Another pulse. The glow strengthened. Then quietly, a whisper brushed their thoughts. Not powerful, not commanding, just a voice on the edge of existence. Why, did you save me? Archer replied without hesitation. Because no one deserves to be owned. The surfer's glow flickered again. You know, nothing of ownership. Archer leaned forward. Then show me. The room grew silent again. Then the surfer spoke, weaker than before, but clearer. You believe sacrifice is noble, that principle outweighs necessity, that compassion is reason enough. You do not understand the cost, Archer answered steadily. Then teach us. Norin Rad's eyes opened slowly, dim light glowing within them. I will show you what it means to defy hunger. Archer frowned. Defy Galactus? The surfer shook his head, barely moving. No, to defy nature itself. His eyes brightened the faintest bit. To defy the universe. Phlox exhaled. Captain, his stabilization is working, but he's far from recovered. If we push him too hard... Archer cut him off. We're not pushing him. We're listening. The surfer lay silent for a moment. His next words arrived heavy and cold. You believe saving this world was victory? Archer nodded. We prevented its destruction. The surfer's voice echoed darkly. No, you delayed it. And now, without me to guide him, T'Pol stiffened. The pattern of Galactus's choices has been disrupted. Yes, the surfer's voice grew harder. He will seek a world on his own, without mercy, without calculation. Archer understood. Without you, there's no restraint. The surfer looked at him. Without me, the universe starves faster. Reed spoke quietly. Captain, we didn't free a hero. We freed a dam. T'Pol looked at Archer. The cost is coming. The surfer closed his eyes. You must prepare your world. Archer stepped closer. For Galactus? No, Nor and Rad whispered. For yourselves. The decontamination chamber pulsed with soft light, like the heartbeat of something mechanical trying to pretend it was alive. The surfer lay still, stabilized only by the warp resonance that clung to his form like invisible scaffolding. Archer stood at the glass, watching the faint glow ebb and return, ebb and return. T'Pol monitored the field while Phlox recorded every fluctuation with careful fascination. The silence felt heavy, as if the ship itself were waiting for its next breath. Archer finally spoke. You said we must prepare ourselves. For what exactly? The surfer did not move. His eyes remained closed, but his voice slipped across the room like a cold wind. I restrained my master, not by strength, by judgment, by choosing which worlds die. Phlox frowned. You speak of that as though it were mercy. It is mercy, the surfer replied. Mercy is not saving the innocent. Mercy is choosing which innocent must be sacrificed. Without me, there is no choice. There is only hunger. Reed, listening from the corner of the room, exhaled. So he'll just pick worlds at random now? Not random, the surfer's voice hardened. He will choose the closest sources of energy, dense worlds, populous worlds, worlds that shine brightest. Civilization attracts him, as light attracts insects. The more advanced you become, the more delicious you are. T'Pol looked to Archer. Then growth becomes a threat. The more we expand, the more likely the Federation, or its precursor, will be consumed. Archer stared at the surfer. So you're telling us progress paints a target on our backs? Norin Rad's eyes opened. Progress always paints a target. It merely decides who is willing to be shot. Mayweather entered then, summoning Archer to the bridge with a quiet urgency. Captain, you should see this. Now. Archer followed him. T'Pol and Reed trailed behind. Phlox remained with his patient. When they reached the bridge, the star outside seemed fragile, as though still afraid of its near-death experience. Hoshi turned from the communications console. Captain, we're receiving strange bursts across multiple subspace channels, not language, more like distress harmonics. Archer frowned. Distress from who? Hoshi shook her head. Not who. What? It's coming from an entire system. T'Pol studied the pattern. A star system is broadcasting a warning. Darren Nebula Sector. 2 light years from here. There are pre-warp civilizations there. Reed tightened his jaw. They're screaming for help, without words. Archer turned to Travis. How long to reach them? At maximum warp, Travis answered. 6 hours. We don't know what's there, Reed cautioned. Could be a Romulan trap. Could be something else. Archer nodded. But that's what this ship is for. T'Pol looked to Archer. Captain, before you commit, if Galactus is drawn to civilizations emitting energy signatures... Archer finished her thought. Then a distress pulse might act like a beacon. Reed whispered. A feeding call. Mayweather swallowed. Then if we go there, T'Pol completed it. We may arrive just as the Predator does. Archer stared at the dim star beyond the glass. His voice held no hesitation. If something is coming, we'll be there first. He turned sharply. Travis, head for Darren's sector. Aye, sir. Plotting course. The NX-01 turned, thrusters engaging as the ship angled toward the coordinates. Warp engines built a deep hum. Archer felt the deck vibrate beneath his boots, the familiar pulse of risk. The ship elongated through the view screen as the stars stretched into lines. Then the engines roared and they leapt into warp. The hum faded into a long, steady thrum. Archer glanced at T'Pol. How soon do you think Galactus might act? She considered. Perhaps days, perhaps hours, perhaps now. His hunger is not driven by decision, only by need, and need does not wait. Reed stared at the warp stream. We're in a race with someone who doesn't even know there's a race. T'Pol corrected him calmly. He knows. He simply doesn't care who wins. In the decon chamber, Phlox watched the surfers glow, pulse once more. Norin's eyes slowly opened again. Phlox stepped forward, curious. You are stabilizing. The resonance is holding. Do you feel stronger? The surfer whispered. Stronger does not mean safer. Phlox nodded thoughtfully. Quite true. I have found that the healthiest patients often make the most dangerous choices. The surfer looked at him. You fear me. Phlox smiled gently. I fear losing life that has struggled to survive. You qualify. For a moment, the surfer seemed to study the doctor. Then his voice softened. You are unusual. Phlox grinned proudly. I hear that often. The ship hummed around them. In the center of that hum, the surfer whispered something unexpected. You risked yourselves for me. Why? Phlox raised his brow. Because saving someone isn't about deserving. It's about need. The surfer slowly shifted his head. Need is hunger. Need consumes. Phlox shook his head. Not always. Sometimes need saves. The surfer stared at him, then looked past him, through the walls of the ship, as though seeing something far beyond its metal hull. You believe that saving me was mercy? Phlox frowned. Wasn't it? The surfer's voice chilled. Mercy is never free. Something must pay for it. The lights flickered, just once. On the bridge, T'Pol's console beeped sharply. Captain, something else now. Another signal. Archer turned. Is it coming from Darren's sector? No, from the far edge of the expanse. A different transmission. Deliberate, structured, directed at us. Hoshi's translation algorithms flickered through patterns. Then her eyes widened. Captain, it's in our language. Archer leaned forward. Put it through. The message came as a short burst. A single phrase. Do not save him. The bridge went silent. Reed exhaled. Someone knows what he is. Archer stared at the screen. Or someone knows what happens next. T'Pol's voice came quiet. Captain, the choice you made has consequences. Archer didn't look away. Then we'll face them. Back in the decon chamber, the surfer closed his eyes. His voice whispered like a dying star. You should have let me fall. The message lingered in the air like smoke that refused to disperse. Do not save him. Archer stared at the display, the words echoing with a weight that felt older than language itself. Reed tightened his jaw, waiting for orders. Hoshi slowly removed her earpiece, as though expecting the message to repeat itself. It did not. Archer finally broke the silence. Source? Hoshi shook her head. It's untraceable. It didn't travel through any of the normal subspace channels. It just appeared. T'Pol studied the wave patterns. Impossible. Any message must travel through a carrier. Unless someone or something sent it telepathically, Reed offered quietly. T'Pol nodded. That is one possibility. Archer frowned. Another? she answered carefully. The message may have originated from inside the ship. Reed turned sharply. From who? T'Pol met Archer's gaze and answered flatly. From him. The bridge froze with that implication. Archer pressed his palm against the back of his chair. Hoshi, run a full-spectrum scan on the communication channel. T'Pol, check for telepathic interference patterns. Reed watched the star lines streak by through the view screen. Captain, if he warned us not to save him, then he knows something we don't. Archer looked back toward the sealed decontamination compartment on the other side of the ship. Then we're going to find out what. Hoshi spoke again. Captain, if the message came from him, it wasn't consciously sent. It has the characteristics of an involuntary echo, like a cry repressed, struggling through static. Archer and T'Pol exchanged a single look. An echo of fear? T'Pol replied. Or regret? Archer straightened. We're going to the chamber. They descended to the decontamination room with the tension of a war party without weapons. The hum of warp power and the faint glow of the surfer's stabilization field filled the hallway before they even arrived. Phlox was inside, monitoring instruments, his expression unusually grim. He looked up. Ah, you heard it. Archer's voice tightened. So it came from him? Phlox nodded slowly. Yes. I did not detect structured thought, only emotional discharge. It is like when a patient screams through anesthesia. Archer approached the glass. Norin Rad lay motionless, yet conscious, his eyes dimly opened. Archer stepped forward. You tried to warn us. You told us not to save you. Why? The surfer's voice came weakly, but each word felt honed by suffering. Because freedom has its price. I no longer serve hunger. And now, nothing restrains it, T'Pol replied. We assumed Galactus would be forced to choose his next target without your guidance. You misunderstand, the surfer whispered. He does not choose. I chose. I decided which lives were spent. I gave meaning to loss. Reed frowned. You think that was mercy? The surfer looked at him, hollow. Not mercy, balance. Phlox leaned in gently. You regulated devastation. The surfer nodded faintly. Without my guidance, hunger becomes chaos. Galactus will devour what he finds first, not what spares the most life. Archer paced, realization sinking into him. By freeing you, we created a vacuum, a moral void, a predator without a compass. Yes, Norin said. Now, the universe starves by chance. T'Pol folded her hands behind her back. Then what are the odds he will seek Earth? The surfer closed his eyes. The odds are not odds. The universe is not random. It is efficient. He will go where energy concentrates, where life explodes fastest, where technology advances too quickly, where potential is most flavorful. Archer's stomach twisted. Humanity is rushing toward warp technology, expanding outward, building infrastructure, pushing boundaries. The surfer finished his thought. Your world is becoming a banquet, Reed muttered under his breath. Then we didn't just free him, we invited a god to dinner. Phlox frowned. Surely there must be some alternative, a way to deter him? The surfer's eyes shuddered open. There is only one deterrent to hunger, scarcity. T'Pol raised a brow. You suggest we limit our growth? Abandon exploration? The surfer's voice sharpened. If you shine brightly, he will see you. If you advance too quickly, he will crave you. He is drawn to energy, like gravity is drawn to mass. Archer stepped forward, his voice steady. You're asking us to stop evolving, the surfer whispered. I am asking you to survive. The chamber fell silent again. Then Archer asked the question that weighed on him since their first encounter. If Galactus cannot be reasoned with, if he is pure necessity, then can he be stopped? The surfer did not answer immediately. For a moment, he seemed to search himself, as if looking for scraps of power. Then he finally spoke. Galactus is not evil. He does not seek destruction. He seeks existence. If he dies, T'Pol completed the logic. The cosmic balance collapses. Energy accumulates unchecked. Expansion accelerates exponentially. The heat death of the universe arrives sooner. The surfer nodded. Reed scoffed. So if we try to kill him, we doom everything. And if we don't, he eats us. Phlox exhaled softly. An organism that must be fed to maintain universal balance. Exactly, the surfer whispered. And I was the conscience that chose who must starve so others could thrive. Archer stared at him. Then why warn us? Norin Rad finally looked at him. Because no one should be forced to choose who dies. Archer spoke quietly. We don't abandon people, or planets, or you. The surfer closed his eyes. I was not abandoned. I was spared. And now, someone else will pay the cost. Reed turned to Archer. Captain, the galaxy is now missing a shepherd, and the wolves are hungry. Archer steadied himself. Then we'll learn how to defend ourselves. We'll learn how to protect others. We'll prepare, not by hiding, not by shrinking, but by understanding. We won't let him starve our future, the surfer whispered, almost mournful. Your kind does not bend. That is why you are doomed. Archer leaned closer to the glass. Or that's why we win. The surfer did not smile, yet his silence shifted, like a man who remembered hope but refused to touch it. Phlox checked the monitors. He will live, for now, but he cannot leave the warp field. If he does, he will collapse completely. Archer nodded. Then he stays, and we learn from him. T'Pol looked at Archer. Captain, we are still en route to the Darren system. 6 hours to arrival. If the distress call we detected is connected to him, we may be too late. Archer turned away from the glass. Then we shave that time down. Mayweather's voice came through comms. Captain, Warp 5.2 is possible, but it will put additional stress on the containment field around him. Archer answered without hesitation. Do it, the surfer murmured, barely audible. You hurry to a funeral, Archer replied. No, to a rescue. Warp engines roared louder. The ship surged faster. The surfer whispered in the quiet left behind. Then you will witness how hunger feasts. The ship strained against itself as it pushed past its recommended velocity. Warp 5.2 wasn't just fast for NX-01, it was reckless. Every bulkhead on the Enterprise felt stretched, like the vessel was clenching its teeth. The hum deepened, the deck plates thrummed. It felt less like traveling and more like being dragged. In the decon chamber, the surfer remained suspended in faint light while Phlox monitored him. T'Pol and Archer returned to the bridge to oversee the approach. Reed reviewed tactical protocols for threats they weren't even sure could be fought. Minutes passed. Then Mayweather's screen flashed with new readings. Captain, arriving at the Darren system perimeter, dropping to sublight. The warp field collapsed back into normal space, and the view filled with darkness and dust. A faint red star hung in the distance, flickering weakly. Archer frowned. That star looks unstable. T'Pol's scans confirmed it. It is undergoing premature decay, not caused by age, but by deprivation. Archer stiffened. Deprivation? As if it's being drained? T'Pol nodded. Yes, but not by Galactus. The surfer's voice drifted across the ship's comm without being transmitted, like the air itself carried it. Not him. Another feeder. Reed looked uneasy. Another? How many cosmic gluttons are loose in the universe? The surfer replied weakly. Many, some small, some vast. Hunger is not unique, it is eternal. Archer stared at the screen. Then we're walking into a feeding ground. T'Pol enhanced sensors. There are planets in this system, 4 terrestrial worlds. One with pre-warp civilization approximately equivalent to early Bronze Age. Reed exhaled. That message we picked up, that wasn't a distress signal from a ship. It was from a planet. Archer nodded. They're crying out to anyone who can listen. The surfer's voice was steadier now. They do not know what approaches, only that something is wrong. Their world is cooling. Their sun is failing. Archer turned to T'Pol. What's causing the drain? If it's not Galactus, then... T'Pol's console spiked with readings. Something is masking itself near the star. A field of gravitational interference. Reed squinted at the returning scan. It's cloaked. Romulans? T'Pol shook her head. No, not Romulan signature. It's older, different. It bends light like a solid object. A stealth device around something colossal. Mayweather-adjusted viewer magnification. The ship, or object, came into focus like a shadow peeling away from night. A vast structure hovered against the star, draining its light through massive conduits. It resembled both a fortress and a parasite. A machine drinking from a sun, Archer whispered. What the hell is that? The surfer's voice pulsed with recognition. The Ravenark Forge. T'Pol looked to him through the glass window feed. Explain. The surfer's voice darkened. A vessel forged by a dying empire. Machines that consume stars to fuel weapons. Once built by mortals, now automated. No crew, only hunger. Reed stared in disbelief. A star-eating machine, left on autopilot. Archer stepped closer to the screen. Can it be stopped? The surfer answered. Yes, but not destroyed easily. And if you kill it, its protocols trigger. It will explode. The shockwave will incinerate the entire system, Reed muttered. A self-destruct apocalypse feature. Wonderful. T'Pol analyzed the readings. If we disable its feeder conduits, we might interrupt its cycle without triggering its failsafe. Phlox's voice chimed through comms, surprised. Captain, the surfer's energy is stabilizing faster the closer we get to the object. He is absorbing stray radiation from the decaying star. But, unwillingly, the surfer whispered, do not let me feed. If I gain strength, he will sense me. Archer froze. If you get too strong, Galactus notices? Yes, Reed muttered. We're being stalked by one universe eater, while another star eater is already here. Perfect, Archer ignored him. T'Pol, can we disrupt those conduits without blowing up the system? T'Pol nodded. Possibly, but we would need to modulate our phasers to a frequency that disintegrates the feed while leaving the structural superframe intact. Trip joined on comms. Captain, I can retune phase coils to target a resonance frequency, but we'll only get one shot. If the forge adapts to our fire, we won't have a second chance. Archer made his decision. Do it. Reed prepared weapons. Phase cannons ready, on your order. Mayweather aligned the ship into position, bringing us into range. T'Pol fine-tuned calculations. Target feed aperture A11 through D34. They are the primary siphons. Reed focused. Target locked. Archer stepped up behind him. Fire. The NX-01's cannons blazed, firing a concentrated volley at the conduits. The beams hit exactly where targeted, scoring the metal surfaces. Then ripples of distortion spread along the structure. T'Pol's readings spiked. It's working. Energy transfer dropping by 20%. 30, 40, then the machine changed. Trip shouted through comms. The forge is adjusting its intake. It's compensating, reconfiguring siphons. T'Pol nodded quickly. It's rerouting the process to secondary nodes. We must disable those as well before... A booming pulse erupted from the forge, slamming the Enterprise like a fist. The ship rolled sideways. Sparks flew. Reed nearly flew from his station. Mayweather fought the spin. Trip's voice crackled. They're not happy. They're charging up something big. Archer regained his footing. What's coming? The surfer's voice echoed faintly. Starburst. It will use the star as a weapon, T'Pol confirmed with widening eyes. It will accelerate fusion and blast us with stellar plasma, Archer shouted. Reverse course. Full impulse. Move. Mayweather slammed controls. The ship lurched backward as the star erupted with a massive flare. Light surged outward. Plasma roared like a tidal wave of fire. Reed yelled, "Brace for impact." The flare struck. The Enterprise shook violently. Warning alarms blared. Shields collapsed in a flicker. Bulkheads screamed. A blue-white flood washed across the view screen, and then silence. Trip panted through comms. Hull plate integrity, 50%. Shields offline. But we're alive, T'Pol recalculated. The forge has resumed the drain, but its weapon charge has stalled. It bought itself more time. Archer looked at Norrin Rad through the chamber window feed. You know this machine. How do we shut it down for good? The surfer whispered. With sacrifice. T'Pol turned toward him. You mean, with power? The surfer nodded. I must drain it as it drains the star, then redirect the energy outward, not into hunger, into destruction. Reed stared. But that would kill you. The surfer smiled faintly. You freed me. You gave me autonomy. Let me choose how I use it. Archer leaned forward. If you do this, Galactus will notice. The surfer closed his eyes. Then let him see me stand. Archer shook his head. Not alone. The surfer opened his eyes. Then share my burden. Archer turned to T'Pol. Options, she exhaled. We could amplify his output via a controlled warp pulse. The same way we freed him. We could increase and direct his energy. Trip broke in. But if his output spikes too fast, he'll burn like a fuse. Archer finished. So we regulated. Together. The surfer's voice grew clear. Then we destroy hunger that has no conscience. Archer nodded. Let's end the forge. Reed readied weapons. T'Pol recalibrated resonance. Trip rerouted warp power. Mayweather steadied the ship, and the surfer whispered to the void, Let me be mercy one last time. The Enterprise shifted carefully toward the dying star, positioning itself between its radiation stream and the massive machine siphoning its life. The Ravenark forge loomed like a carcass, feeding on a carcass. Wires and conduits clamped to the star's corona like leeches. Light bled from the star in pulsing waves, filtered through the towering machine, and funneled into deep reservoirs. Its hull glowed with stolen sunlight. Trip reported over the comm, voice tight. Captain, the forge is charging again. It's speeding up extraction. If it finishes storing all that energy, we'll be looking at the biggest bomb since the Big Bang. Archer stood firm on the bridge. Then we don't let it finish. T'Pol, initiate harmonic link between our warp field and the surfer. T'Pol adjusted controls. Link established. Energy conduit ready to transfer. But, Captain, once the surfer begins the drain, there will be no way to stop the process. The only question will be whether he survives it. Reed glanced toward the chamber. And if he doesn't, Archer replied quietly, then we helped him choose how to die. T'Pol's voice dropped low. And Galactus will see him again. The surfer's faint voice came through the comm. He will see me and understand the limits of those who bear conscience. Trip cut in. Captain, hull stress is rising. Structural support isn't meant for controlled cosmic siphoning. We're going to shake this ship into scrap. Archer nodded sharply. Then we'll do it fast. Travis, position us 70 degrees to the star, below the forge. Trip, feed warp harmonics into the surfer at his signal only. Phlox listened from the chamber doorway, expression suddenly hard. Captain, understand this. If the surfer starts to disintegrate, stopping the process might kill him. And if he completes it, he may still die. There is no safe outcome. Archer met his eyes. We didn't sign up for safety. In the chamber, the surfer stood weakly, supported by the warp field like a man held upright by wind. His dull surface began to shimmer, as though remembering it once was light. Archer opened a channel directly to him. Norin Rad, we're ready when you are. Silence. Then, slowly, the surfer spoke, voice growing stronger. Begin. T'Pol activated the field. The ship groaned immediately as warp resonance surged down the tether surrounding the surfer. His body arced with electricity like a star being reborn. The light around him crackled and grew, silver flames licking across his arms and chest as the warp field fed him, carefully, precisely. Trip's voice jumped up an octave. He's pulling harder than we calculated. I'm having to throttle output manually. If I back off too much, he collapses. If I don't, he goes supernova. Phlox stared with alarm. He is absorbing at an unstable rate. We must keep him conscious or he will lose control. Someone must speak to him. Archer nodded, turning on the comm. Norin, stay with us. Focus. The surfer's eyes flared bright. His voice thundered like a storm inside steel. I am more than hunger. Energy surged outward. The surfer lifted his hand. His body radiated the light of half a sun. The containment chamber's walls glowed white-hot, but did not melt. They shifted, as if woven from the same warp resonance holding him. The Ravenarch forge reacted instantly. It turned. The massive feeding conduits retracted from the star at once, redirecting toward the Enterprise. Its main aperture dilated open like an iron maw, preparing to devour the surfer's energy instead. Reed swore under his breath. It's trying to suck him dry. T'Pol's voice was measured, but urgent. They detect higher quality energy than the star. They prefer him. He is more efficient fuel. Trip slammed controls. I'm boosting hull polarization. If they pull him through that hole, we lose everything. The surfer's voice roared across the ship like thunder. Let it come. Archer gritted his teeth. Norin, don't let it take you. Focus on the drain. The surfer extended both arms. Silver-white energy surged from his chest, striking the forge in a blinding beam. It wasn't an attack. It was theft. He was stripping it of its own stolen power. The forge screeched in subspace, a deep metallic howl like tortured iron. Reed stared wide-eyed. He's draining the machine. He's turning its hunger against itself. Trip shouted over the comms. But that means its energy reservoirs are going critical, fast. If we don't eject that power, we're gonna blow half the system. Archer pointed toward the star. T'Pol, can he redirect the energy back into the star? T'Pol checked readings. No, the star cannot contain so much. It will ignite uncontrollably. The surfer's voice rumbled. I will redirect it beyond the system, into the void. Reed frowned. Into space? Just dumping a star's energy into nothing? Where does it go? The surfer whispered coldly. "Where hunger cannot follow," Trip yelled. "Captain, we're at the limit. One more surge and the surfer screamed, not in pain, in power. Light burst through him, brilliant enough to cut shadows off the walls. The beam expanded, ripping energy from the forge faster than it could react. The machine writhed like a living thing, metal glowing red, conduits bending and twisting as if begging for mercy that had never mattered. T'Pol shouted over the light. "The forge's core is destabilizing. If he doesn't redirect that energy now, we'll all be vaporized," Archer called out. "Norin, now!" The surfer raised his arms higher, voice echoing across every mind on the ship. "I choose who survives." He shifted, and every drop of stolen starlight shot past the Enterprise in a single, massive bolt. It tore through space like a spear. The blast continued on, vanishing into the darkness beyond the system, leaving a glowing trail that faded like a ghost. The forge collapsed, its conduits shattered, its immense structure cracked open, emptied of all power. Then it fell silent, dead. The star steadied. A calm glow replaced the tremors. The system lived, Mayweather whispered. "It's over." T'Pol checked readings, breath slow and even. The star is stabilizing. The system is safe. Phlox turned toward the chamber. His voice softened. But at what cost? The surfer lay collapsed, his glow extinguished, body dark and motionless again, silver without light. Archer pressed a hand to the glass. Norin Rad? No answer. T'Pol scanned closely. He still exists, but barely. He is at the threshold of dispersal. Archer shut his eyes briefly. "Then we stabilize him again." Reed spoke softly. "And then what? If he awakens with no power, he's vulnerable. If he regains strength, he draws his master." Archer stared through the glass. "Then we help him find another way, a path that isn't servitude or annihilation." T'Pol looked at him steadily. "Captain, hope is not a strategy." Archer's reply was quiet, resolute. "No, it's a choice." Behind them, lights flickered once, just once, not malfunction. A warning. The surfer whispered, without voice. He is aware. The lights across the Enterprise dimmed for only a moment, but the change was unmistakable, like the breath of something immense passing through the ship. No alarms rang, no sensors registered a threat. Yet the bridge crew felt it, as though the temperature dropped, even without a measurable shift. T'Pol was the first to speak. "That was not a malfunction. Something brushed against our systems. It was not physical." Reed frowned at his console. "Then what was it? A hack? A telepathic attack?" T'Pol shook her head slowly. "Neither. More like a presence." Archer stood, eyes drawn to the star on the view screen. The system had stabilized. The forge was destroyed. The surfer had drained it. They'd won. That should have been the end. Yet something else lingered in the vacuum, unseen, but not unnoticed. He looked toward sickbay through the internal feed, where Phlox and Trip were working over the surfer's inert form. A small pulse of light flickered beneath his skin, beating like a distant star's heart. Phlox held up his scanner and leaned in, watching. Fascinating. Even without dominant energy reserves, he maintains a quantum field structure. He's clinging to existence at subatomic levels. Trip wiped sweat from his brow. Good, because if he fades any further, there's nothing left to boost. Phlox nodded. "I'll continue stabilizing him. His physiology is attempting to adapt, as if searching for a means to survive alone." Trip paused. "You mean he's trying to live without Galactus?" Phlox's expression grew serious. "I believe so, but adaptation takes energy, and he has none left. Archer tapped the comm. Keep him stable, Doctor. If he fights to live, we're not letting him do it alone. Flock smiled softly. That may be the first advantage he's ever had. On the bridge, Reed's console flickered again. Another pulse. No alarms. He grimaced. Captain, I've got something on long-range sensors. I don't know how to classify it. It's not a ship, but it's moving. The crew leaned toward the readings. There was no visible object, no warp signature, no impulse trail, just a distortion, a ripple crawling slowly through space, devouring background radiation as it moved. T'Pol adjusted the sensors. It absorbs all wavelengths, leaving nothing but gravitational displacement. That is, her voice trailed. Archer finished for her. Consumption. Mayweather's hands froze over navigation. You mean something is eating space? T'Pol gave the slightest nod. Something vast. Reed swallowed. Galactus? T'Pol stared at the distortion. We cannot confirm. And yet, nothing else fits the pattern. Archer lifted his chin. Travis, how far? Mayweather blinked rapidly. If it maintains current speed and direction, 36 days to reach this system. Silence fell, heavy as a sealed tomb. Reed exhaled. Then we have a little over a month before it arrives here. Plenty of time to figure out what to do, T'Pol corrected calmly. Captain, Galactus did not escape his notice when his herald broke free. He is not traveling. He is awakening. Mayweather stared at the screen. Then he doesn't need to travel at all. He's coming because he knows. Tripp's voice crackled over the comm from sickbay. Captain, we've got something happening down here. The view feed zoomed in. The surfer's glow was growing. Not bright, not restoring power, but pulsing in rhythmic flashes. Flock stared, mesmerized. These pulses are synchronized. They are not random, Tripp frowned. Doctor, tell me that's not a distress beacon. Flock shook his head. No, if anything, it's the opposite. Tripp blinked. A warning? Phlox nodded slowly. Yes, it is a response. He knows his master sees him, and he is replying, telling him something without language. Archer listened closely to the pulses. Short, short, long, short, long, long. T'Pol studied the pattern, not coordinates, not a summons, a declaration. Reed raised an eyebrow. A declaration of what? Phlox responded quietly. Defiance. The pulses accelerated suddenly, as though the surfer's body were screaming at a cosmic entity. Light throbbed violently, flickering through sickbay until the bulkheads shimmered with silver reflections. Tripp backed away. Doctor, if he loses control... Phlox shook his head firmly. He is not losing control. He is asserting it. The surfer's voice flooded the comms. No volume, no breath, just a message permeating every frequency on the ship, even those no human could hear. I choose my fate. Then the pulses stopped. His glow faded again. Phlox scanned him frantically. Present! Stable! Faint, but present! Tripp released a long breath. So, we're helping a guy who just declared war on a cosmic predator, Reed muttered. Sooner or later, we're going to have a talk about career decisions. Archer stared at the star on the screen, then back to the fading glow of Norin Rad. He spoke softly, but the whole bridge heard it. He's not declaring war. He's declaring independence. T'Pol looked at Archer. And independence demands protection. Are we prepared to defend him? Archer's eyes hardened. We are. Reed leaned forward. Against Galactus? How? Archer breathed once, resolute. By giving him something Galactus never imagined he'd have. An entire world standing with him. A civilization willing to risk itself for one life. T'Pol studied him. That is illogical. Archer nodded. It's human. The comm channel chirped from sickbay. Phlox's voice sounded thoughtful. Captain, for the first time since he arrived, I believe our patient understands that his existence has value outside of servitude. That might be the one thing Galactus cannot consume. The bridge crew absorbed that. Then the lights dimmed again, this time for 2 seconds, long enough to know something was watching, listening, waiting. Across the Enterprise, systems flickered once more, as if something immense brushed the hull from 1,000 light years away. No alarm sounded, yet everyone felt the same crawling sensation, like being observed by something that did not need eyes. T'Pol watched the readings stabilizing across her console. Captain, whatever is observing us is not localized. It is affecting subspace itself. Archer leaned over her shoulder. Meaning? Meaning it does not exist in a point. It exists everywhere it chooses to look, Mayweather whispered, under his breath. So the universe is looking at us, Reed muttered, almost involuntarily. Or something beyond it. In sickbay, Phlox wiped perspiration from his brow. The surfer's glow was a faint pulse now, no louder than a heartbeat. Each flicker seemed strained, as though he were enduring enormous pressure. Pressure not of mass or energy, but expectation. Phlox lowered his scanner. He is not recovering further, Captain. Something is holding him in this state. Archer heard the unspoken question behind the doctor's tone. Something or someone. Phlox met his eyes. He broke his chains. But elements of that bond linger. I suspect his master waits to see if he survives on his own without intervention. Tripp sank into a chair. So Galactus is treating this like an experiment, a test. Phlox nodded. One that we could be influencing. Reed's voice came through the comm from the bridge. Captain, faint Romulan transmissions detected at extreme range. They're shadowing the system. No drones this time. Cloaked capital vessels. Listening. Tripp scoffed weakly. Romulans love a crisis they don't have to cause. Archer stepped toward the screen. They want to know what happens to the Herald. They want to know if this is about to turn into something bigger, T'Pol added with unsettling calm. They are likely deciding whether the surfer is prey or a weapon that must be stopped before he heals. Reed's jaw tightened. And they might conclude we're the ones enabling him. Phlox glanced back at the surfer. If he recovers even a fraction of his former strength, every major power in this quadrant will try to control him, just as the Romulans attempted. Archer exhaled through his nose. Then we make one thing absolutely clear. He's not a weapon, and he's not a resource. T'Pol raised an eyebrow slightly. How, Captain? Do you announce that to civilizations that believe power exists only to be exploited? Archer stared at the stars, then said, quietly but firmly, we show them what power looks like without exploitation. We show them that one life does not need to be sacrificed for many. On the screen, Soval's voice from Earth suddenly cut through the comms. It was unexpected, unscheduled, immediate. This is Ambassador Soval to Captain Archer. You will explain why the Vulcan High Command has detected a cosmic anomaly linked to your ship, and why the Romulans are mobilizing at your border. Starfleet Command demands an answer. Archer swallowed. So Earth knew. Vulcan knew. And the Romulans were waiting in the shadows. Soval's tone carried quiet alarm beneath the disciplined Vulcan calm. You have encountered something that is altering subspace highways, disrupting deep field energy signatures, and provoking unknown strategic interests. Explain. Archer turned to the crew. They all silently prepared themselves. Then Archer spoke into the channel. Ambassador, we have a being aboard the Enterprise. His name is Norin Rad. Soval responded immediately. A being? As in, first contact? Archer nodded. Yes, Trip whispered from sickbay. That's one way to put it, Archer continued. He isn't an enemy to be feared. He's a refugee, and we are attempting to save him from the entity that enslaved him. There was a long silence on the line. Finally, Soval spoke. Captain Archer, Earth is not prepared for conflict with an entity that dwarfs stars. Archer closed his eyes briefly. Then we better prepare. T'Pol stepped closer to Archer, softening her tone. Captain, perhaps we should release what data we have to Vulcan Science Command. If we share our research, other civilizations will understand his value lies not in use, but in knowledge and ethical precedent. Archer thought about it. Sharing the data would mean losing control. It would mean the surfer's fate would become political. It might lead to diplomacy or to war. But hiding it would mean hoarding the unknown, allowing fear to decide its future. Archer turned to the surfer, barely alive, struggling to exist without being owned. Then he gave his decision. Transmit everything. Reed's eyes widened. All of it? Archer nodded. All of it. Let every government, every scientist, every power see exactly what we're doing. Rescuing one life without expectation of reward. Let them know we are not creating a weapon. We are saving a person. Trip smirked. Never thought the day would come we'd solve a galactic threat with homework. T'Pol raised her voice slightly. Data stream initiated. Broadcasting to Vulcan, Starfleet, Andoria, Teller, Denobula, and any Romulan interceptors listening secretly, Reed muttered dryly. They're going to love that, Archer spoke, as though to the stars themselves. Let them listen. Let them all see what we stand for. In sickbay, the surfer's pulse flickered, just once, stronger, almost grateful. Phlox's eyebrows lifted. His vitals improved slightly. Emotional stimulus, or awareness of our choice. He is still connected to what we do. He is aware, Archer whispered to himself. Then let him know we don't trade freedom for safety. The ship hummed with the broadcast, a message carried without fear. But as the transmission spread, the lights dimmed again. Not 2 seconds, 5. Long enough to feel breath without lungs, hunger without teeth, attention. When the lights returned, every system registered the same message, untranslated, raw, imprinted on the ship's sensors. One word, soon. The lights returned, but no one felt safer. The word lingered, without a voice, without a signal, without a direction. Soon. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't even a promise. It was a fact, like gravity, or sunrise, or storms. T'Pol's instruments shook with residual vibrations. The energy signature did not originate from any known spectrum. Not subspace, not telepathy, not mechanical interference. Archer asked quietly. Then how did we receive it? T'Pol replied. Didn't. It imprinted itself, Reed muttered. Like a fingerprint on steel. Archer corrected him. No, like the steel remembering it was touched. There was no comfort in that thought. Phlox reported from sickbay. The surfer responded. His vitals spiked for 2 seconds, then fell. He heard him. He knows the meaning. Trip looked up from the bed. And? What's he feel about it? Phlox hesitated. Unknown. Terror would raise adrenaline. Anger would spike energy. Regret would shift his neural pattern. He shows none of these. Trip frowned. Then what does he show? Phlox said quietly. Acceptance. Trip blinked. You mean he's fine with this? Phlox shook his head. Not fine. Resolved. He knew this was coming. He expected it. Trip leaned closer to the surfer. You saw this coming. You broke free anyway. Why? The surfer's voice formed like mist over cold water. Because freedom must begin somewhere, even if it ends. Trip swallowed. You expected death. The surfer's eyes opened just a sliver. Death is not a concern. The universe does not die with me, Phlox whispered. But people will. Archer and T'Pol arrived at sickbay. The surfer turned his head faintly toward them. T'Pol's voice was crisp. Galactus is awakening because he senses imbalance. You no longer act as filter. The surfer nodded weakly. Balance must exist. If he devours without reason, the universe suffers. If he dies, the universe suffers. You cannot kill hunger. You must feed it. Wisely. Archer stepped closer. And you're telling us no one else can do that? The surfer hesitated. Someone could, but only after learning what it costs to choose who dies. Archer stared. And you think we're capable of that? The surfer whispered. Not yet, but someday, if you survive. Reed's voice cut in over comms from the bridge. Captain, we've got movement. Archer tapped his communicator. Explain. Reed's tone was sharp. Multiple Romulan ships uncloaking at the edge of the system. 3 warbirds. They're observing us openly now. They're done hiding. Archer glanced at T'Pol. She responded calmly. They want to see how weakened the surfer is. If he is no longer valuable, they may seek to destroy him. If he can still be controlled, they will fight to obtain him. Phlox looked genuinely offended. He's not a tool to wield, T'Pol replied. They do not see a person. They see strategic advantage, Trip whispered to the surfer. And what do we see? Norenrad closed his eyes. Choice. T'Pol turned to Archer. Captain, if we remain near the star to keep him stabilized, we cannot flee. If we flee, his matrix collapses. If we fight, we risk destruction before Galactus even arrives. Archer nodded. Then we can't stay, and we can't run. Trip scratched his head. So we gotta do something insane. Reed cut in from the bridge. Captain, the Romulans are charging weapons, but not firing. They're waiting. They want to see what we do. Archer turned to the surfer. You said someone could take your place. Someone could learn, Noren whispered. Someday. Archer shook his head. Why someday? The surfer's eyes opened, dim but certain. Because no one volunteers to starve. T'Pol tilted her head. Perhaps they would, if it prevented others from suffering. Archer stared at her. T'Pol, she met his gaze. I am not suggesting sacrifice. I am stating that morality demands mutual risk. If we do not share his burden, we are not an ally. We are simply a spectator. Trip exhaled in disbelief. You're saying we offer to help Galactus choose who to feed on? That's insane. T'Pol looked at Archer. Starfleet is built on diplomacy, on preventing war through understanding. This is simply diplomacy at a scale beyond comprehension, Phlox added gently. And perhaps mercy, shared, becomes something new, not sacrifice. Guidance. Reed's voice snapped back on comms. Captain, Romulans are hailing. Repeated demands. They want a decision. Now. Archer took a long breath, then another. Then he looked at the dying, barely conscious surfer. Can you teach us? Not how to kill Galactus, not how to fight him, how to reason with him. The surfer's faint glow quivered. Reason is costly, Archer nodded. Then we'll pay it, not with lives, with responsibility. with knowledge. T'Pol stepped forward. If we guide him, we choose life, not death. The surfer stared at them, as though seeing something impossible. Then his voice whispered, like the beginning of sunlight. Then, "You must learn hunger," Reed shouted from the bridge. "Captain, Romulans are demanding you surrender the surfer, or they will open fire." Archer stood tall, voice steady. "Tell them no," Reed paused. "Straight no," Archer replied. "Tell them we don't hand over refugees," T'Pol added calmly. "And send the broadcast data to them as well," Reed's voice cracked. "To the Romulans?" Archer nodded. "Everyone gets the truth," Reed muttered. "They're going to hate that," Archer replied. "Good. If they hate transparency, they'll know they can't twist this into a weapon," the surfer whispered. "Freedom spreads." Then the ship trembled again. Not hunger this time. Movement, dark signatures, massive, slow, distant, slid across the outer edge of sensor range. Reed's voice returned, low and stunned. "Captain, we've got another contact. Not Romulan, not Galactus. Something else. Waiting, watching, deciding," T'Pol whispered. "The galaxy is responding." The bridge lights dimmed again, but this time it wasn't hunger or a cosmic brush. It was a sensor overload. The ship choking on an incoming mass so large the computer struggled to classify it. Reed stared at the tactical display like it might bite. "Captain, I don't know how to describe this. It's not a ship. It's not a station. It's architecture." T'Pol leaned over the console, her voice unusually subdued. A construct of that scale shouldn't exist without collapsing under its own gravity. Yet it does. Mayweather squinted at the expanding silhouette on the screen. "Looks like a city, a whole city, floating in space," Hoshi whispered half to herself. "An artificial world." The object drifted just inside long-range visuals, a labyrinth of geometries, towers rising into a void, linked by glowing bridges of unknown energy. Like someone had carved a metropolis out of starlight and plated it in darkness. Reed swallowed hard. "It's not approaching. It's observing." T'Pol analyzed the silence. "It is waiting for us to make the next move." Archer gave a thin, focused nod. "Then we won't keep it waiting. Hail them." Hoshi tried. The comm panel hummed, rejected every broadcast, and flashed a single message. Signal absorbed, no error, no refusal, just taken. Hoshi blinked at her console. "Captain, our message didn't go anywhere. It was consumed, not blocked, not ignored, consumed." T'Pol looked up from the readings. "They are analyzing our communication, breaking it down, studying its structure." Reed exhaled. "Great. An alien city just ate our phone call." Mayweather's voice tremored slightly. "Captain, do we know if it's alive, or if there's someone inside it?" T'Pol studied the mass quietly. "I detect no organic signatures, but energy patterns resemble neural processes." Reed stared wide-eyed. "So the whole thing might be a brain?" T'Pol corrected calmly. "A mind. Though perhaps not one evolved as we understand evolution." Archer felt the tension settle into his bones. Something had seen the surfer break free, saw the forge fall, heard the broadcast of data they shared. Something ancient, intelligent, and not aligned to Galactus or the Romulans had come to evaluate them. He tapped his comm. "Sickbay. Doctor, I need you and Norin Rad conscious enough to help us talk to a city." Phlox responded, voice strained. "I must warn you, Captain. Pushing him into consciousness now may force him to take from us. Energy, vitality. He will not intend it, but he will need it," Archer asked evenly. "Will it kill us?" Phlox paused. "Not if we control the exchange, but we will feel it." Archer nodded. "Do it," Trip protested from sickbay. "Captain, We don't even know if that thing out there is a threat, Archer replied. If it's not a threat, then we give it honesty. If it is a threat, we give it honesty. Either way, we don't hide. In the chamber, Phlox tightened the warp resonance, and the surfer's eyes opened again, barely. The light inside them flickered, but they were aware, present, and pained. Archer stepped close to the glass. Norin, something else has arrived. The surfer responded only with silence at first, his eyes fixed on something beyond the ship, as, though gazing directly into the unknown construct, Phlox asked gently, "Do you recognize it?" The surfer whispered. "No, but I know its purpose." Trip leaned in. "And what's that?" The surfer closed his eyes briefly before answering. "To judge." Archer frowned. "Judge who?" The surfer opened his gaze again. "Not who. What?" T'Pol translated. "What we represent." The surfer nodded weakly. "You freed me. You destroyed a predator without replacing it. You did not claim me. You did not run. You shared knowledge without seeking leverage. It is watching to see if you repeat those choices, or betray them," Reed muttered. "So the galaxy is full of cosmic social workers?" The surfer didn't smile, but there was something close to sorrow in his voice. When beings gain power without wisdom, civilizations suffer. Some watch for that imbalance. Some correct it. Some prevent it. By any means. Archer stiffened. "And you think this construct is one of them?" The surfer whispered. "The universe is not governed. It is balanced, sometimes by hunger, sometimes by consequence, sometimes by observation." T'Pol stared at the construct. "Then they are waiting to see if we become what we destroyed." Archer nodded. "Then let's show them who we are." He returned to the bridge, voice steady. "Open all records. Let them see everything, from our warp signature to our crew logs. Tell them nothing is hidden." Reed raised a brow. "Captain, you're handing them our entire profile," Archer replied. "If they came to judge sincerity, then we show them sincerity." T'Pol transmitted data stream, details, technology, even unflattering mistakes. Nothing withheld. The construct reacted. A beam of soft violet light touched the Enterprise. Not aggressive, not disruptive. Curious. It scanned the hull gently, as though reading a book line by line. Readings across the bridge surged. Hoshi gasped. "Captain, it's learning our language, rapidly." Archer nodded. "Then we speak." The violet beam brightened, and a voice formed across every speaker, deep and layered, like thousands speaking through one throat, neither hostile nor kind. "We observe a deviation." Hoshi looked confused. "Deviation?" the voice clarified. "You protect one who brings annihilation. You defend that which births extinction. You nurture danger. Explain." Archer felt the eyes of the bridge crew turn to him. He spoke clearly. "If freedom is dangerous, we accept the danger. If mercy has consequences, we take them. If responsibility brings risk, we face it." The voice rippled. "You reject ownership. You reject sacrifice. You reject fate," Archer replied. "We reject inevitability. We choose." Silence followed. Deep silence. Then the voice returned, softer. "We observe a beginning." Suddenly, the beam recoiled. The massive city-like construct turned slowly, like a planet shifting its orbit. No attack, no verdict, no warning. It spoke one last time. "We will return when choice matures." Then it left, fading into the distance until it disappeared into subspace. Reed blew out a breath. "They didn't punish us. They didn't reward us. They just left," T'Pol commented calmly. As Norin said, "They judge what may become." Archer slowly nodded. "We passed nothing. We failed nothing. We simply existed. Phlox reported from sickbay, the surfer's vitals stabilizing again, without assistance. Captain, I believe the encounter strengthened him. Not physically, psychologically, the surfer whispered faintly. You did not trade freedom for survival, Archer responded. We never will. The surfer's eyes drifted shut again, and somewhere in the distance of space, hunger grew nearer, because the universe had seen their choice. No one on board said it aloud, but the ship felt different now, not stronger, not safer, just awake. The stars outside didn't look like a map anymore. They looked like responsibility, the kind that grew heavier the further humanity stretched into them. Archer stood in the ready room with T'Pol and Phlox. The hum of the Enterprise felt like distant thunder. Phlox's report lay on the table, dense with scans, waveform anomalies, and quantum behavior patterns. Phlox tapped a pulsing graph. His resonance is stable, not improving, but no longer deteriorating. He's maintaining existence by will alone. Remarkable. T'Pol folded her hands. Survival without sustenance. A paradox. He is functioning as a closed system. Archer looked at them both. How long can he last like this? Phlox considered. Hard to say. He's adapting, reconfiguring himself, but he cannot recover fully, not while refusing to feed. T'Pol raised a brow. Then his condition mirrors our ethical stance. We reject the cruelty of his role, and so does he. Phlox nodded. But ethically admirable does not mean sustainable. Archer exhaled. That's Starfleet in a sentence. The comm chirped. Reed's voice came through, tense. Captain, Romulan forces are repositioning. They're closing in on our vector. Archer stood. We'll handle it. Keep me updated. He headed for the bridge, T'Pol close behind. Phlox paused, looking once more at the readings, at a being holding together through choice alone. In sickbay, Norin Rad lay still, silver skin muted. He blinked, slowly, awake again, without having slept. He overheard the whisper of the engines, felt the ship turn its attention like a living thing. Trip sat nearby, running diagnostics on the containment field. You're lucky, you know. If you were anything like us, you'd need food right now. And we don't exactly have a cosmic cafeteria on board. The surfer's voice came thin as a breeze. Luck is for those unaware they are falling, Trip smirked. You cosmic types ever say anything comforting? The surfer turned his head slightly. Comfort is for those who believe they will be safe. Trip sighed. I walked right into that one. Meanwhile, on the bridge, Reed's tactical display flashed red. 3 Romulan warbirds now surrounded the system perimeter, silent, uncommunicative, but tightening formation. Archer watched them. They're waiting for proof we can't handle what we're protecting, T'Pol added. They are testing whether the surfer's weakness makes him vulnerable enough to steal, and whether we are weak enough to let them. Hoshi raised a hand. Incoming transmission. But they're not talking to us. They're broadcasting to the entire system. The message played, cold and authoritative. This is the Romulan Star Empire. We are here to contain an imminent threat to galactic stability. Any interference will be met with force, Reed muttered. They're framing themselves as heroes, Archer responded. Then we don't give them a villain. He stood before the view screen, tapping the console to broadcast back publicly. No encryption, no secrecy. This is Captain Jonathan Archer of the Enterprise. There is no threat here. There is a survivor, a refugee. We are protecting life, not endangering it. The Romulan line went silent. Sensors showed internal communication traffic spiking aboard their ships. Archer had forced them to negotiate publicly, where fear-mongering was harder. T'Pol looked at him. "You are making them choose openly." Archer nodded. "If they attack now, they're aggressors. If they withdraw, they admit the truth. Either way, it's their choice," Reed added under his breath. "Not bad for a species that barely left home a decade ago." The Romulan response finally came. Their commander's voice was sharp, clipped. "Humanity is naive. You believe fragile compassion can regulate cosmic force. You believe mercy has value. You cannot protect the universe from hunger," Archer replied slowly. "Maybe not, but we can protect one person from being eaten alive by duty." Silence. Then the Romulan voice spoke again, quieter, as if confused by sincerity. "You defend him without benefit?" Archer answered. "Yes, without benefit," the comm crackled. "And what do you expect in return?" Archer's voice stayed calm. "Nothing." Something shifted in the tone on the other end. Too subtle to be sympathy, too proud to be respect. But it wasn't contempt. The Romulan commander said only, "We will observe," and the Romulan ships halted their advance. Reed frowned. "They're standing down?" T'Pol corrected. "They are watching, to learn who we become." Archer turned away from the view screen. "Let them watch." Then a new alarm sounded. Reed checked sensors. "Captain, the space distortion is accelerating. The one connected to Galactus." Mayweather swallowed. "How fast?" Reed stared as readings climbed like a rising tide. "Fast enough that 36 days is now 19. T'Pol's voice came flat and steady. "Galactus is not approaching. His awareness is," Hoshi whispered. "His attention is moving through space," Reed muttered. "Then what happens when his body catches up?" Archer looked toward sickbay through the internal screen. "Jiu, Norin Rad, alive only through choice. We make sure he doesn't face it alone." In sickbay, the surfer whispered to himself, "Hunger meets resistance." Trip glanced over. "What was that?" The surfer looked at him, barely breathing, barely glowing, and said, "Teach your people this truth. Hunger does not end, but it can listen to strong voices." Trip looked confused. "And how do we get a god to listen?" the surfer answered. "By speaking honestly, not loudly." Archer's voice came through the intercom. "All senior officers, report to the briefing room. Now," the surfer whispered before Trip left. "Do not plan to fight him. Plan to be heard." The briefing room felt smaller than usual, crowded by tension rather than bodies. Archer, T'Pol, Reed, Hoshi, Mayweather, and Trip took their seats. Phlox joined via visual link, while the surfer's containment status glowed on a separate display, its dim heartbeat marking time like a fading metronome. Archer stood at the head of the table. 19 days. That's how long we have before Galactus arrives physically. But his awareness is already here. So we don't prepare for a battle. We prepare for a conversation. Reed frowned. "Sir, with respect, conversations are difficult when one side is a cosmic appetite," T'Pol added. "Galactus does not reason as sentient beings do. Traditional persuasion cannot succeed." Archer looked to the display of Norin Rad. "Then we don't use traditional persuasion. We speak in a way that matters to him." Trip scratched his head. "And what language does a god eat?" Archer answered. "Consequence." Phlox leaned toward the screen. "Galactus does not destroy worlds out of malice. He sustains an equilibrium. He is necessity, not cruelty. If we can demonstrate that humanity's growth contributes to balance and not excess consumption, then sparing us becomes functional, logical." Hoshi blinked. "So, we don't ask him to spare us out of morality. We prove that we're worth more alive than dead. T'Pol nodded. Precisely. We present humanity as a stabilizing agent, not a resource. Reed sighed. Then how do we convince him we stabilize anything? We're barely stable ourselves. Mayweather spoke quietly. By showing him what we just did here. Archer nodded. We protected a being we could have exploited. We destroyed a predatory device without using it. We didn't hoard knowledge, we shared it. We chose responsibility over power. And that's a start. T'Pol raised an eyebrow. But that will not suffice alone. Words alone are insufficient. Galactus requires demonstration. He must see evidence. Trip sat forward. Then let's give him evidence. Something undeniable. Something that proves we help the universe instead of hurting it. Archer turned to him. Any ideas? Trip hesitated, then said something unusual for an engineer. We fix what we didn't break. Reed frowned. The forge is gone. The star is stable. What's left to fix? Phlox suddenly straightened. The planet. The civilization that called out for help. Hoshi looked startled. Their sun was dying. Their ecosystems almost collapsed. Their world is cold, starved, and frightened. T'Pol nodded. They face extinction from deprivation. Their future was already being consumed. Archer realized the implication. If we help them recover, we demonstrate what Galactus's hunger might prevent. Not by stopping his existence, but by counterbalancing it with growth. Trip rubbed the back of his neck. Captain, if we help them rebuild, that shows our expansion doesn't just take. It gives back, T'Pol added. We show growth as nourishment, not extraction. Reed looked at the star through the window. So we prove that life can feed the universe rather than drain it. Archer smiled faintly. That's our language, life as contribution. Hoshi exhaled shakily. But we can't interfere directly. They're a Bronze Age civilization. Archer turned to her. The Prime Directive hasn't been written yet. Starfleet hasn't even defined what non-interference means. We are deciding that now. T'Pol regarded him steadily. Whatever we choose will form the precedent for all future contact. Archer didn't flinch. Then our precedent is simple. We help without control. We strengthen without changing who they are. We give without demanding gratitude. We restore what they lost, not elevate, not exploit. Mayweather nodded slowly. Not advancement, stability. Phlox smiled. Care that preserves autonomy. Reed exhaled. That's harder than fixing a warp core, you know. Trip laughed under his breath. So we make history the hard way. Nothing new. Archer stepped to the center. We're going to help this world survive. And when Galactus arrives, we show him the outcome. A planet thriving because of us, not beholden to us. T'Pol stood. If we succeed, Galactus will see humanity as an asset to cosmic order, Reed muttered. And if we fail, Archer replied, then we show him what it means to try. The comm beeped. Phlox spoke softly. Captain, before you step onto that path, there is someone who must see your choice. The screen switched to sickbay. The surfer stood, not strong, not bright, but standing. Every movement cost him, yet he held himself upright. His voice came thin as moonlight. You are choosing life not for usefulness, but for existence itself. Archer nodded. That's what makes it worth defending. The surfer closed his eyes briefly, then opened them with slow resolve. Then I will help you, not with power, with truth. T'Pol studied him. You would teach us how to speak to hunger. Norin Rad nodded. And how to be heard by necessity. Reed cleared his throat. Sounds like we're about to take a diplomacy course from a star-eating herald. Trip smiled. Beats. Another Vulcan lecture. T'Pol ignored him. Archer faced the crew. We begin immediately. Prepare to support that planet. Quietly, carefully, respectfully. The ship hummed with new purpose, and somewhere unseen, the cosmos shifted. Because for the first time, Galactus would meet a world that did not beg to live or fight to survive. A world that chose to contribute. The planet below the repaired star appeared calm at first glance. Lush valleys, river networks, oceans reflecting pale sunlight. But deeper scans revealed something else. A wounded world. Crops failed in fields that once flourished. Forests thinned, herds collapsed. The climate chilled and never recovered. A civilization still advanced through ritual and tool-making, but its people lived beneath a sky that no longer nourished them. The atmosphere was filled with smoke from countless fires, an attempt to stay warm. Villages clustered tightly together, living close to heat, struggling to survive. Archer stood at the observation window, watching them from orbit. He wasn't looking at their technology. He was studying their desperation. Trip joined him. They don't look like they're dying. Not yet. They look like they're trying not to. Archer nodded. That means there's still something to save. T'Pol stood behind them, scanning the population distribution. Their climate models had predicted permanent cooling without intervention. The planet was entering a slow extinction. We must act subtly. If they realize their heat sources are suddenly restored, they may attribute it to myth, to divine will. Cultural distortion would be inevitable. Archer shook his head. We don't change their beliefs. We don't introduce ours. We just fix the damage and walk away, like we were never here. Trip frowned. Is there even a way to fix a planet without waking it up? Norenrad's voice answered from behind them. Yes. They turned. The surfer wasn't floating. He wasn't glowing. He stood on his own, like a man recovering from a long illness. He rested one hand on the doorframe, steady but fragile. Archer stepped toward him. You should be resting. The surfer shook his head slowly. I rest because I choose to, not because I must, and I will choose action now. T'Pol regarded him. You believe you can repair this climate without causing disruption? He nodded. I cannot restore the sun, but I can return warmth, quietly, invisibly, through cosmic particulate manipulation. I would accelerate selective atmospheric rotation to disperse heat from the upper stratosphere to the surface. They will not see this change as intervention. They will not attribute it to gods. It will feel like weather. Trip scratched his head. So you'll shift the climate like stirring soup? The surfer replied. Like restoring breath to lungs starved of air. Archer frowned. And you're sure it won't expose you? Noren answered simply. I do not need to be seen to save. Phlox's voice cut in, through comms. Captain, I must advise caution. His energy levels are extremely low. Even subtle manipulation could destabilize him again. The surfer looked directly at the intercom speaker. Then stabilize me afterward. Life is not preserved by hoarding strength. Archer nodded. All right, let's do it. Reed's voice sounded from tactical. Captain, incoming message. The Romulans are requesting a visual. Archer sighed. Let's get this over with. The Romulan commander appeared on screen, her face stern and unreadable. Human ship. We detect a shift in the planet's thermal patterns. You are interfering. Archer answered calmly. We are fixing damage we didn't cause. Damage that your forge would have finished, not elevating them, not exploiting them, repairing what was broken. The Romulan commander narrowed her eyes. Your idealism is a weapon you wield with arrogance. You risk influencing a civilization prematurely. Archer responded without hesitation. Influence is unavoidable. We choose our influence consciously. The commander paused. That choice will cost you resources, ships, lives. Is it worth it? Archer nodded. Their survival is worth our effort, whether they know we helped or not. The Romulan dipped her chin slightly, as though studying a strange animal learning to stand. Then she cut the channel. Trip smirked. Did a Romulan just respect us? Reed frowned. No, she just found us unpredictable, and that scares her. Archer turned to the surfer. Let's begin. They moved to the cargo bay doors, recalibrated to open into space. The ship hovered above the planet's upper atmosphere. The surfer stepped forward slowly, every motion careful, deliberate. Trip whispered. You good? The surfer nodded once. Pain is a reminder, not a barrier. He stood at the edge of the bay, raised his hand, and the air around the ship shimmered. There was no beam, no blast, no sound, just a change in motion, invisible currents swirling through the atmosphere. The planet seemed to inhale. The cold clouds thinned. Heat descended. Tiny shifts, too small for eyes to notice, too subtle for any civilization to trace. Hoshi watched sensor data in awe, temperature stabilizing near equator, moisture redistribution beginning, winds normalizing. T'Pol nodded. The intervention appears indistinguishable from natural atmospheric correction. Reed updated readings, wildlife migration stabilizing, vegetation recovering, slowly. Trip smiled. We're feeding a world without touching it. The surfer lowered his arms slowly, trembling. Archer rushed to steady him, but Norin shook his head. Let me finish. He extended his other arm, just enough to complete a final corrective shift. A whisper of warmth cascaded across the poles, easing the frost. Then the surfer collapsed. Archer and Trip caught him before he struck the deck. His body was cold, not silver brilliance, but cold, like metal left in shadow. Phlox arrived with medics, quickly erecting a portable field to stabilize him temporarily. He's not dying, he's conserving, he's entering a form of energy coma. He will need time, a great deal of time. Archer lifted the surfer slightly. You helped them. Why take this risk? The surfer whispered weakly. Because survival should not feel alone. His eyes closed completely. Phlox nodded. Let him rest. T'Pol monitored planetary readings. The climate is stable, life will continue, and they will never know why. Archer looked out the viewport at the sleeping world. We don't do it for thanks. We do it because it's right. Reed exhaled. Now what? We sit back and wait for Galactus to drop by? T'Pol responded. No. Now we prepare to communicate, not with words, with precedent, with demonstration. Mayweather spoke softly. What if he doesn't care? Archer replied. Then we keep choosing what we are, whether he cares or not. The planet below shimmered faintly under new warmth. In the decontamination chamber, Norin Rad slept, not fading, but holding on. And in the distance, something vast stirred again. Not anger, not hunger, curiosity. The planet turned slowly beneath the Enterprise, a quiet marble of cloud and ocean and wounded land, trying to remember what warmth felt like. On the view screen, it looked peaceful. That was the most deceptive part. Archer knew better now than to trust peaceful skies. T'Pol stood at the science station, eyes moving over lines of Vulcan text. Temperature bands are continuing to normalize. Atmospheric circulation is re-establishing long-term patterns. Within a decade, their climate will be indistinguishable from pre-collapse projections. Archer nodded slowly. They'll still have hard years. T'Pol inclined her head. Recovery is rarely comfortable, but they will recover. Reed, at tactical, glanced between his console and the screen. No signs of surface conflict. No large-scale migration. Just the usual, struggling to get through the day. Archer crossed his arms. Sometimes that's the bravest fight there is. Hoshi turned from communications, removing one earpiece. Still just natural background. No artificial transmissions, no radio, no directed signals. They don't even know what almost happened to them. Archer's eyes lingered on the planet. They shouldn't have to. The universe almost ate their sun. They're entitled to live their lives without knowing the menu. Tripp's voice came over the intercom, tinged with fatigue. Engineering to bridge. Warp manifolds are all green again. The ship has stopped sounding like it's about to cough itself apart. T'Pol arched a brow slightly. An imaginative description, but accurate. Tripp went on. Also, Flock says our silver friend is, well, not good, but not dying either. He's waking up in bursts. Consciousness comes and goes like a flickering light. You might want to be here next time it sticks. Archer nodded. We're on our way. T'Pol, you have the bridge. She moved to the center seat without hesitation. Understood. Archer and Reed took the turbo lift to sickbay. Reed didn't say anything until the doors slid shut. Captain, he said quietly, you really think we've seen the last of whatever's out there watching him? Archer answered without looking at him. No, I don't. But that doesn't change what we do now. Reed nodded slowly. No, sir. I suppose it doesn't. When they stepped into sickbay, the lighting was low, softer than usual. Not dim because of power constraints, but because Phlox had calibrated it for the being on the biobed in the center. Norin Rad lay still, skin a muted silver gray instead of shining chrome. He looked less like a cosmic herald and more like a statue someone had forgotten to finish. Phlox hovered near his head with a scanner, brow furrowed. Ah, Captain, good timing. Our patient is in one of his lucid intervals. The surfer's eyes were open, but he was staring at nothing, as if the bulkheads were transparent and something unimaginably far away held his attention. Archer stepped closer. Norin? The surfer blinked, then shifted his gaze to Archer. Captain, you remain in orbit. Archer shrugged slightly. We don't leave half-done work. A faint trace of something like amusement touched the surfer's expression. Most civilizations run from what nearly killed them. You loiter. Reed folded his arms. We're making sure your planetary near-miss doesn't collapse on its own. Norin's eyes flicked toward him. You speak of it as an accident. It was not. It was design. Something fed on their sun. Archer frowned. The forge. It's gone. Norin shook his head just once. The forge was a tool. Tools do not choose. They are wielded. You cut off its hand, not the arm. Phlox's scanner chirped nervously. His neural readings are spiking again. He's remembering. Archer leaned on the rail. Remembering what? Norin's voice softened. The taste of this system, the way its star sings. Hunger does not forget a song it almost devoured. Reed stiffened. You mean Galactus knows this system now? Norin closed his eyes briefly. He knew it the moment the forge attached itself to the star. He is not omnipresent, but his senses extend far beyond his reach. He catalogs potential sustenance, triage, a universe of possibilities weighed against necessity. Archer's stomach tightened. So when we destroyed the forge, Norrin finished for him. You removed an instrument of extraction. You did not erase knowledge. He has not forgotten this world, or the one who intervened. Phlox looked from the surfer to Archer. That suggests he's aware of this ship. Norrin's eyes opened again. Aware is not the same as interested, but interest is coming. I feel it. Archer thought of the last line of part 18 of this strange story he found himself in without knowing the chapter count. Something vast stirred again. Not anger, not hunger, curiosity. You said he was curious, Archer said. Norrin nodded faintly. At first, you severed my chain without destroying me. That is not common. That alone draws attention. Reed's voice grew quiet. So what happens when curiosity gets bored? Norrin didn't answer immediately. When he finally spoke, the words were slow, deliberate. Then it decides whether what it sees is worth preserving or consuming. Phlox's hand tightened around his scanner. Are we about to become an appetizer? Norrin turned his head toward Archer. Not yet. Hunger that vast moves slowly, but awareness does not. Already his consciousness brushes this region. It will test you before it judges you. Archer frowned. Test us how? There's no invasion force, no fleet, no glowing beams from nowhere. Norrin's lips parted in a humorless smile. He will watch what you do when you believe no one is watching. Reed glanced toward the ceiling. Newsflash. We already know someone's watching. Norrin shook his head, weakly. Intellectually, perhaps. But your actions now will prove whether you act for others or for yourselves. Archer stepped back from the bed. We've already helped this world, quietly, without being asked, without reward. Norrin studied him. That was the beginning, not the conclusion. When hunger observes, it doesn't judge a single choice. It judges a pattern. Phlox glanced at the displays above the bed. His energy is climbing slightly, Captain, just enough to sustain conversation. He is unwilling to draw more. Archer looked from Norrin to the doctor. Unwilling? Phlox nodded. He refuses to feed in any way that might risk alerting Galactus to a direct connection. Even passive absorption makes him tense. Norrin's jaw clenched. I will not be his anchor again. If I starve free. Archer shook his head. That's not an acceptable trade to me. Norrin's eyes flashed with something like gentle reproach. It is not your choice. Archer stepped closer again. Maybe not, but we can give you options and information and a sense that your existence doesn't just matter because of what it can do for a cosmic predator, Reed added. Or for us. Phlox smiled faintly. Or for my medical textbooks. Norrin exhaled, a sound like weary amusement. You are an unusual species. T'Pol's voice came over the comm from the bridge. Captain, you should return to the bridge. We are detecting a dimensional gradient at the edge of the system. Archer tapped his badge. On our way, he met Norrin's gaze. Rest. We'll deal with this. Norrin's eyes drifted shut again. His voice followed them, soft as dust. You will not deal with it. You will define yourself to it. On the bridge, the atmosphere was taut, but not panicked. The main view screen showed the star field at the system's edge, and somewhere within it, a faint distortion, like heat over stone. T'Pol pointed to her display. Subspace density is increasing in that region, but not in a localized tear. More like a gentle compression. Reed considered that, like something big leaned in for a closer look. Mayweather tilted his head. It's not approaching. It's holding just outside normal sensor range. Hoshi listened, fingertips hovering over her console. There's no message, no language, but there's rhythm, faint, almost subliminal, like a heart that doesn't need to beat. Archer moved toward the screen. Can we pinpoint a source? T'Pol shook her head. It does not originate from a point. It permeates a volume, Reed muttered. So, the system's inside somebody's line of sight. Archer stared into the distortion. He remembered how Q once described higher dimensional beings in stories he'd heard from future captains. Not omnipotent, just unfathomably unconcerned. This didn't feel like Q. This felt older, slower, a glacier of intent, drifting through creation and making choices that looked like disasters from down below. Hoshi swallowed. If it's him, Archer didn't answer. He didn't need to. T'Pol turned from her console. Even if it is simply a fragment of his awareness, he will not communicate in the way we understand, but he will interpret. That much is certain. Archer took a breath. Then we make sure what he sees is what we are, not what we fear he expects. Reed frowned. We already fixed the planet. We're keeping the surfer alive. What else is there to show? Archer slowly lowered himself into the captain's chair, not as a man bracing for impact, but as one preparing to make a statement by sitting very, very still. We stay, he said. We keep watch over that planet until we're certain our interference isn't going to unravel anything. We monitor the Romulans. We protect Norrin without turning him into an asset. And we share our data with anyone who asks instead of hoarding it. T'Pol studied him. You intend to behave as though every choice will be written into an accounting ledger. Archer shook his head. No, I intend to behave exactly as we would if no one were watching, and trust that if something is watching, it understands the difference. Mayweather half smiled. So our big strategy is to be ourselves. Archer returned the expression. For better or worse? Reed sighed softly. I was hoping for something involving lower decks modifications to phase cannons. Hoshi glanced back at him. You'd fire phase cannons at a feeling? Reed shrugged. It's worked on some admirals. The bridge actually laughed at that, tension easing just enough for everyone to breathe again. Outside, the distortion at the system's edge pulsed once, almost lazily. Not closer, not farther. Present. A watcher in the dark, content, for now, to see what this small, loud, fragile starship did next. Archer looked at the planet one more time, then at the silent distortion. He didn't speak to it, not out loud, but his resolve ran through the ship like a second heartbeat. We won't run. We won't pretend we're bigger than we are. We won't hand over someone who asked us for help. And we won't stop doing the right thing just because the exam might be over. In sickbay, Norrin Rad's fingers curled slightly, as if gripping some invisible edge. Flock saw it and smiled to himself. Curiosity, he murmured, is a good sign for everyone. The Enterprise held its position, a tiny shape between a saved world and a watching universe. And for the first time since this all began, Archer felt something beneath the fear. Not defiance, not pride, responsibility. The Enterprise held its orbit through another rotation of the planet below, its engines quiet, its systems stable. The ship was no longer racing, no longer reacting. It was waiting, by choice. There was a difference, Archer thought. Waiting because you're out of options is desperation. Waiting because it's the right thing to do is intention. Trip Tucker sat on the bridge with a portable diagnostic unit, using his downtime to fine-tune relay subsystems. Even he seemed calmer than usual, or maybe just tired. Reed, watching tactical but not tense, muttered, "I can't remember the last time we stayed put this long without being under attack." Mayweather replied softly, "First time we're learning from space instead of running from it?" T'Pol looked up. "Space is not hostile. It only answers to its own nature. We interpret our vulnerability as its aggression." Hoshi glanced at her. "Starfleet should make that its motto, or print it on crew mugs." Reed smirked. "I'd drink out of that." Archer remained quiet for a long moment. The planet rotated slowly beneath them, its clouds shifting. Its climate settled not because of heroes or technology, but because someone gave it room to breathe. Finally, Archer said, "We're not here to play savior. We're here to clean up a mess and leave quietly. They shouldn't remember us. They shouldn't even know we were here." Trip nodded. "That's how you help someone live, not how you make them admire you." There was no applause, no heroic swell of music, just understanding. Archer pressed the intercom. "Phlox, how's our guest?" Phlox's voice carried the tone of a doctor who genuinely enjoyed solving mysteries. "Progress. He's conscious for longer stretches now. Energy fluctuations have stabilized, despite his refusal to feed. I believe he's discovering what it means to exist without sustaining something larger than himself. That's not medical recovery. It's philosophical." Archer traded a glance with T'Pol. "That may be more difficult than healing." Phlox chuckled. "I'm beginning to suspect philosophy is harder than medicine." Archer headed to sickbay alone. Between the steady hum of the ship and the slow pulse of the star outside, the walk felt like the quiet after a storm. Norin Rad was not shining when Archer arrived. He was upright, sitting, eyes open, aware. His softness made him seem more alive, not less. Archer greeted him. "You look steadier," the surfer replied, softly. "I feel unfamiliar, but not diminishing." Phlox nodded approvingly. Identity forming without servitude. A newborn adulthood, one might say. Norin turned slightly toward Archer. "I did not thank you earlier." Archer's expression remained steady. "We didn't ask you to." Norin seemed to consider that with weight. Many civilizations do not act until it benefits them. Archer shrugged slightly. "We acted because someone needed help. Right doesn't stop being right when no one's watching." Norin studied him. "You speak as if morality is not performance." Archer leaned against the rail. "Shouldn't be. If it is, it's not morality." Phlox quietly excused himself, sensing they needed privacy. After a moment of silence, Norin asked, "What becomes of your world? If others like him notice you?" Archer shook his head. "I don't know. But if we hide from attention, we become the kind of civilization that deserves fear. If we act with integrity, whether seen or unseen, then at least we deserve respect, even from forces that could end us." Norin looked down at his hands, still learning what power meant when it didn't come from fear. "I never realized that freedom could require discipline." Archer smiled faintly. Every child thinks freedom is doing anything they want. Every adult eventually realizes freedom is doing what's right, even when it's difficult. Norin breathed in slowly, painfully. Not from injury, but from comprehension. "You are a species that will suffer greatly," he said, "but not because you are weak, because you choose responsibility." Archer nodded. We consider that the cost of progress. Suddenly, a chirp sounded from the ship's intercom, followed by Reed's voice. Captain, the distortion at the system edge is receding. Slowly, Archer straightened. Without speaking, both he and the surfer understood. Judgment was not being rendered. Observation was concluding. He tapped the comm. Maintain course. Do not hail. Do not pursue. Reed acknowledged. Understood. Norin said softly, he sees that you continued to protect without audience. He sees that you stabilize the world without announcing yourselves as architects. He sees you let me live without demanding obligation. Archer let that settle. The bridge crew felt it too, though they couldn't quite describe the sensation. The distortion shrinking felt like an exhale. Norin closed his eyes, not in weakness now, but in peace. His voice came lighter. He leaves satisfied. Archer asked. With us? Norin answered. With your potential. You are not condemned. You are not exempt. You are noted. Archer chuckled. We'll take noted over devoured. Norin smiled. You misunderstand. To be noted by something that vast is not threat. It is recognition. Archer, let that sit quietly. A species barely out of its cradle had just been seen. Not as livestock, not as children, but as participants. Not equals, not competitors, not tools. Participants. He turned to leave sickbay, but Norin called out once more. Captain Archer. Archer stopped. Norin's voice was steady. I would like to see your world someday, not as a herald, not as a judge. Archer looked back with simple certainty. Then when you're ready, we'll welcome you, not as a weapon, not as a warning, as a guest. Norin inclined his head. Then one day, I will visit in peace. Archer walked out, not triumphant, not anxious, but with the quiet satisfaction of someone who had done what was necessary without expecting acknowledgement. Back on the bridge, the distortion faded completely from sensors. The star shone bright and steady. The planet below warmed in its renewed light. Nothing dramatic closed the moment. No grand cosmic voice. No final test. Just life, continuing. The Enterprise returned to silent orbit, not because it expected reward, but because the work wasn't finished until it was finished. Archer stood behind the captain's chair. Helm set our departure time, 72 hours. That gives us 3 more days of observation and a proper goodbye, whether they ever know we were here or not. Mayweather smiled. Aye, sir. Reed leaned back. 3 days of peace. I don't trust it, Hoshi chuckled. Enjoy it anyway. T'Pol looked at Archer. This was not victory, Captain, not defeat, something else. Archer nodded. Progress. Outside, the planet turned. Inside the Enterprise, the crew continued their tasks, not with adrenaline, not with fear, but with purpose. A small ship, a large universe, acting not for applause, but for dignity. The final 3 days passed without spectacle, no distortions, no sudden signals, no cosmic messages. The subtlety of it was almost unsettling to the bridge crew, who were used to calamity announcing itself with drama. But this was different. The universe had looked their way, then turned, satisfied. Silence, Archer realized, was its own acknowledgement. The planet below continued recovering in small ways that would never make history books. Soil warmed, crops germinated, migratory patterns shifted back to normal. Fires gave off less black smoke. Villagers slept longer without waking from cold. They would never know what happened, and they didn't need to. On the last day, Archer stood in sickbay one final time. Norin Rad rested upright, stronger now. Not luminous, but stable. His voice held weight without force. "You are leaving soon." Archer nodded. "We'll break orbit today. We've stayed long enough to make sure things won't slide backward once we go." Norin glanced toward the ceiling, as if seeing beyond hull and atmosphere. "They will endure now, and they will never know intervention saved them." Archer smiled softly. "Survival doesn't need a narrator, just opportunity." Norin turned his gaze fully to Archer. "You set a precedent, not for them, for yourselves." Archer crossed his arms. "Maybe, or maybe this is just who we want to be." Flock stepped forward with a data pad. "Your cellular energy has stabilized at a level that no longer threatens dissipation. You are alive on your own terms now. You will grow, slowly, perhaps painfully, but by choice rather than mandate." Norin looked down at his hands again. "Choice," he said quietly. "Not sustenance, not command, not obligation. Choice. It weighs more than slavery ever did." Archer replied. "Sometimes freedom feels heavier because we have to carry the consequences ourselves." Norin's eyes softened. "Then the weight is worth bearing." He stood, slowly but without tremor, and approached his board. It responded like a loyal animal rising to meet him. He paused with one hand resting on its surface. "This is not departure. It is beginning." Archer nodded. "Not for you, not for us." Before leaving sickbay, Norin turned. "When next I see your world, I hope it greets me not as a herald to defend against, but as a being among beings." Archer smiled. "That's up to us to earn. You won't need to prove anything." Phlox watched as Norin left, then turned to Archer. "Captain, it's rare a patient leaves healthier in spirit than body." Archer chuckled. "The universe is full of surprises." On the bridge, the crew was already preparing departure protocols. Reed confirmed sensor neutrality. T'Pol uploaded the last planetary climate models for Starfleet Science Archives. Trip oversaw final energy routing adjustments to avoid drawing residual radiation from the star into the warp field. Hoshi monitored subspace bands, almost expecting a whisper of curiosity or judgment. There was nothing, only natural cosmic noise, devoid of scrutiny. She smiled faintly and closed her console with a gentle motion. Archer stepped onto the bridge. "Report." "Everything was quiet, Captain," Mayweather replied. "Just quiet." Archer took that in. "Good, let's leave it that way." Trip leaned back in his chair. "We fix a whole solar crisis, free a cosmic surfer from a space god, stabilize a dying world, and now our big grand finale is quietly leaving." Reed cracked a half grin. "Quiet is underrated." T'Pol nodded. "Accomplishment does not require celebration. It requires integrity." Hoshi smirked. "I'd still take cake." Archer sat in the captain's chair. "There's no cake for doing what's right. The reward is doing it," Mayweather asked. "Course, Captain." Archer glanced once more at the world they'd helped without imprinting on. "Set course for home." Trip frowned. "Home? Home, or just Federation space?" Archer shook his head. "Neither. Earth can wait. We go where we're needed, not where we're applauded." T'Pol folded her hands behind her back. "An efficient philosophy." Archer smiled. "It's not just philosophy, it's direction." The surfer entered the bridge just long enough to observe the crew as they prepared for departure. He didn't speak. He didn't glow. He simply looked at each officer in turn, imprinting their faces not through power, but through memory. He bowed slightly, not in servitude, but in respect, and drifted through the hull, unobtrusive and uncelebrated, vanishing into the void like a quiet promise. No star flared, no threat loomed, No judgment lingered, just freedom, heavy but earned. Archer watched the screen as the last trace of silver faded beyond sensor reach. Engage. The Enterprise turned, not toward danger, not toward celebrity, toward whatever tomorrow required. Warp trails stretched into stars, and a single, ordinary ship disappeared into the extraordinary unknown. It did not go seeking praise. It simply went forward, not to challenge the universe, to contribute to it.